Beautiful. All right,
Yeah, well
Justin,
done.
do you want to do the intro then? If we're introducing ourselves,
Should I do the intro?
yeah, go
Oh
for
my
it.
god, all the markings are still here.
You gotta unmadden this shit immediately.
Oh no,
crap.
Roz.
What do I do? Hold on. That's not working.
This is fine. Right. Everybody pretend you don't see the red circle.
Yeah.
You don't see it.
Yeah. Well, that's part of stealth, right?
Yeah. But see, now it's gone. Perfect.
Okay. Hello and welcome to a bonus episode of Well, There's Your Problem podcast, a podcast about engineering disasters with slides. You already know about it, but our guest wants to say yay, Liam. So I'm Justin Rosniak. I'm the person who's talking right now. My pronouns are he and him. Okay, go.
I'm November Kelly. My pronouns are she and her. I'm reserving the yay, Liam, for our guest.
Alea Coots, she, her. Yay, Liam.
You fucker!
Yeah!
No. You know what? I don't want to do this stupid podcast anyway. Yay, Liam. Hi, I'm Liam McAnderson. I'm the person who's talking right now.
We thought it'd be a good idea to do an episode about stealth technology, and on the screen before you see a fine example of stealth technology.
Stealth.
And Alea wrote most of these slides, so I'm gonna let her guide us through this. But I have little contributions to throw in here and there that just like to divert it down another like hour-long tangent, you know?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Don't worry, we will also be talking about stealth other vehicles such as boats and trucks and even stealth trains. That's right, folks. They existed.
Yeah, me looking for like electrified train routes in the US and being told that they're just very resistant to like sort of me searching for them.
Yes.
Why not?
All right. Next slide, please. All right, we got to do a disclaimer first.
Hello, my name is Alea Coots. I work for the US government. I cannot say what I want to say often, so here's the disclaimer. This is an informative comedy podcast. The views I express are for the purposes of education and humor and should not be assumed to reflect my personal views. As a subject matter knowledge holder, I will be extensively referencing Wikipedia so that I do not share things that are not public knowledge. Neither you nor I want to go to federal prison, and I do not want to be causing problems for Nova as a foreign national on the show.
It's fine. I'll just like cover my ears and like sing.
La 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 la. Right.
This is not the venue for disclosing classified information. That is the War Thunder forums you're thinking of.
The email to reset my password doesn't come through. Okay, I keep trying, but it's like an account I lost the password to, and I can't reset that one. It's a whole. Don't worry about it. It's a whole thing. So that said, I do want to welcome our new visitors and returning visitors from both the U.S. counterintelligence community and other nations' intelligence services. I hope you enjoy the show.
Yeah, I was going to say I was a little bit hurt there'd be new listeners. You know, like I think some of those people are like sort of patrons in good standing.
First time, long time, right? Yeah.
I was about
Even
to
though
say.
we're definitely recording this for the first time, I definitely didn't add it in upon your request.
That's the real issue. Is those guys got the first version of this intro?
Yeah,
For
no,
real.
that's true.
Oh yeah.
This is the like compromat as they hear all the stuff that we like edit out.
It's like, I couldn't do it that time. That one was full of too many slurs. Anyway.
By the time we reach the next slide, there'll be new material, and the timing will be right back to normal.
And
just
and
in time for the Zencaster to crash again.
Oh, it better fucking not.
Don't say that.
And if anyone here is listening from the Secret Service, I'm going to have some words for you when we get to the train section.
Just unusually adding to the list of unusually specific beefs you have with the government agencies. You know.
Yes.
I mean, I have occasionally texted my FBI guy by texting myself just to say hi. I feel like that must be a very lonely job, and I just wanted to make sure that he felt loved. And I know you exist. I can't hear you, but I'm here for you.
Just like radicalizing my FBI guy by being like, you are seen and you are valid. just like
we hear you.
Doing a real like the lives of others thing where like I'm watching I Saw the TV Glow. My FBI guy is watching I Saw the TV Glow and crying. All right, are we sufficiently disclaimed now that people are not going to get
I
mad
sure
at
hope
us?
so, because if people don't understand that, like, this is a performance, then I won't be able to deal with them in real life anyway. So
It's comedy.
enough.
This is comedy that's happening now.
Yes, we're doing comedy.
Apart
Not
from
in-
me,
not
everything I say is
intelligence
100% sincere. I believe all of this. All of this is actionable.
Yeah, maybe we gotta front load this with some conspiracies. Bush did 9/11.
The
What
SR-91
else?
doesn't exist.
Yeah,
Mhm,
yeah.
Nova believes everything that's on slide 44.
Yeah.
CIA killed Kennedy. What else?
Well,
Who's to
it's sort of-
say?
yeah. Every conspiracy theory about the Kennedy assassination is true at once.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, now they won't believe us if we accidentally disclose classified information.
Well
Sounds
done.
good to me.
All right, let's go.
Our beloved onion.
Our
We
beloved
still
onion.
have John Maddening happening,
Oh yeah. I got
but
a
you
D-
can just like.
I got a
don't
D.
know.
John Madden this.
All right.
If I knew enough about football, I could land a really good joke about John Madden there.
Alas and alack.
Yeah. Because I feel like John Madden is kind of out of fashion now that he's been dead for 3 years. And I'm kind of like, we have to de-Madden this is like some shit that like, you know, the Oakland Raiders said in like 1978, you know?
Debathification.
Yeah, a secret speech to the Oakland Raiders. We tore down the big statue of John Madden. All right, so yeah, your onion is ready. Your onion is ready to go.
The onion's ready.
Yeah, Ian's ready.
This is the integrated survivability onion. Connoisseurs of military slide technology will have been aware of this. Those who haven't seen it before, you're welcome.
Mm.
So the survivability onion describes what it takes in a warfighting scenario for people to get you dead. We are talking about layers of that onion today. In a previous bonus episode, the team went through camouflage, which is the do not be acquired layer, which means that you are seen, but you are not recognized.
Oh, just
Um,
like how the Democratic Party treats its constituents.
Yeah, kind of.
The enemy are telling you that you're valid, and
Yeah,
they're
you're
saying that
valid,
they're going to
you're
listen to
seen.
your concerns.
It feels more like they just like hold my rights at the end of a carrot stick, you know?
Hmm.
And they're just like, yeah, just keep trying. Just keep trying. We'll definitely do it this time. We had 2 years with a Senate, a House, and the presidency, and we got shit all.
Mhm.
And then they managed to lose the midterms. So, like, yeah, whatever. I believe that they're trying. They're doing a good job. We are talking about stealth today, which is the don't be seen layer. Rather than being seen and not recognized, we are trying to avoid any photons of the electromagnetic spectrum, and we'll also talk about other ways of detecting vehicles from reaching the eyes of an observer. That is the outside layer of the onion. There is a note here to stop here if this is not a bonus.
It is not a. Wait, fuck. It is.
No,
It is a bonus.
It
It
is
is
a
a bonus.
bonus.
So I will continue. So the outer layer is stealth. The second layer, don't be acquired, is camouflage. The don't be hit layer is the goal of vanilla. The don't be penetrated layer is the goal of tops. And the don't be killed layer is the goal of trans people.
I gotta be honest. I'm fucking up all but one layer of the survivability onion pretty regularly.
Unless you're on Don't Be Killed.
Well, I mean,
I
if you're
hope.
in the trans person layer and you're not getting killed, you're doing just fine.
This is good. This is the affirmation
Like,
that I
we
needed.
want to be in that layer because, you know, we don't want to be outside the top layer. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
You understand what I'm saying?
And the other thing you have to consider is the various other survivability vegetables, the survivability garlic, the survivability celery,
Oh, of
the
course.
survivability potato, the survivability
Yeah, how many more vegetables can you name?
like a
Yeah, let's
leek,
hear.
Ooh.
like
Oh,
maybe a bok choy.
wow. Getting in there.
Yeah, exactly. A carrot, a
Just like some think tank guy is being paid more money than any of us have ever seen right now to come up with a racist slideshow about how in China, instead of a survivability onion, they have a survivability bok choy. And how this has to affect like force postures in the Pacific going forward.
I know it's too late to chime in with this joke because I didn't want to interrupt, but like, is the survivability potato a failed Irish technology?
Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Why?
it's more like, you know, it's sort of like an overwhelmed by the English technology, I guess.
yeah.
Also,
no,
by all
we-
means, interrupt us, please. We all interrupt each other constantly.
We
I
sure
was
do.
about to say the first time we went around this joke, we figured the survivability garlic is actually a pretty good idea. You know, that's strength through redundancy.
Mm.
Mhm. Multiple independent cells, all with their own internal layers.
True.
If you
Yeah.
want a softer garlic flavor, you want to open up the garlic and you want to pull out the garlic hearts from each clove.
Maybe have a survivability jalapeno.
Ooh.
Ooh, that'd be
Yeah.
spicy.
Something that
delicious.
like
Yeah.
deters the enemy from even thinking about your survivability matrix, because it's
Yeah,
like
and then your actual seeds are like separated from the outer wall by like an insulating layer of air.
Oh yeah,
This is
that's a good
kind
point.
of
It's
the
like
vibe of-
air-gapped.
my Twitter account, to be honest. Like it's very unpleasant to sort of like ingest, but that's how I kind of like reproduce my ideas.
So we have many survivability vegetables possible, but today we're specifically talking about the onion.
We were specifically talking about stealth today. The onion is part of that
Oh,
conversation.
yeah,
We're
exactly.
talking about
Okay,
the
right,
like
yeah.
outer layer of the onion is where
The
we're at.
surface layer. And any vegetable, survivability vegetable or not, has the outer layer of don't be seen.
Right.
Yeah, I could take my perfectly ordinary like Abrams tank and like, I don't know, park it behind a building, and if someone's on the other side of that building, they can't see through it. That's a complete onion, you know? It's just
Yeah.
the kind of like the variables on both sides of that can change, because like what if they walk around the building? What if they have like a
Drone strike.
what if they have a kind of comical periscope that allows them to see around the corner of the building?
Yes, exactly.
What if they have
What
a
if
I
you
was
turn your
gonna say.
engine on and they can simply hear you?
Mhm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
What if they have a spy satellite and so on and so on? So,
I can't believe we haven't invented the stealth tech yet.
well,
Oh,
They
Funny
were on a
you
Wikipedia
mention-
page, but didn't have anything
Oh,
useful
God.
on it.
I mean, there have been attempts, let's say. Kind of part of the problem with talking about stealth technology is that it's a lot like talking about MK Ultra, right? You know, the CIA sort of like abortive mind control program, to which the logical question is, if it worked, would you feel any differently about it? Would you know otherwise, right? If there is a successful stealth tank, which there isn't, but like if there were, you wouldn't know, right? But yeah, effectively the kind of state of the art in the field is, I don't know, what if cameras get good enough that we can just do like some kind of optical camouflage on the outside of the vehicle? Which
What if we could make it invisible?
yeah.
Instead of what you're supposed
I
to do.
played Metal Gear Solid 2 as well. Like, come
Right.
on.
You're supposed to paint it pink and then
Oh, I've
That's
seen Die
right.
Another
erect
Day.
a-
I've
yeah,
seen
you
Die
paint
Another
it
Day.
pink and then you erect somebody else's problem field around it.
All right, next slide.
Next slide, let's go.
Love this guy.
Just like everything else, stealth is inspired by nature. This is one of nature's perfect killing machines. This, I believe, is
Yeah,
a
but what about
snowy
the owl?
If you are someone who
Oh my
knows
God,
birds,
Hedwig!
I apologize if this isn't a snowy owl.
Yeah, we
Okay.
don't know.
Um,
We're not
Owls are
biologists.
quiet, that's stealthy. That's as far as I got with this slide.
Yeah, I mean, as you say in the notes, the owl is nature's only stealth air-to-ground attack animal. I spent 5 minutes thinking about this, and I couldn't come up with a counterexample, so I take your word for it. Owls are very stealthy for a number of reasons, like big honking wingspan. As you see, this one here is like also very well camouflaged against like both sky and ground, and they're very quiet as well. Next slide, please. I did find the closest I got to my counterexample was that nature does have a stealth air-to-air capability in the form of bats.
Ugh. Bats creep me the hell out.
Bats are so cute.
No.
I'm 50-50, right? Because
I also sort of lean towards bats being cute, but
they're
also they give you rabies.
yeah,
They
this is the
move weird.
thing.
But if you've ever held one, your heart will break in two and you will die.
If you ever seen like a close-up of a bat, like this is not a flattering photo of a bat, right? If you see a close-up of a bat, you're like, that's a puppy with wings. And then, but like also you don't want to get rabies, right? So,
Yeah.
like I say, mixed bag.
I don't think you have that problem over in the UK. It's over here in America where the bats all have rabies.
Actually, that's not entirely true. Like rabies isn't endemic in like other animals. Like if you get like scratched by like a squirrel, as I did, you don't have to get a rabies shot. But like bats, there have been some cases. Like the UK's only rabies cases have been from bats. People going like into caves and shit. So you know,
So it's also
don't-
because like bats have like the most fucked up immune system possible.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
It just
don't-
works completely different from everything else.
Yeah, I guess the thing is, like, don't fuck around with bats. Like, they're very
Yes.
cute and everything, but like, leave them alone. Leave them to
Yeah.
be in their
Leave-
caves
leave
and
them
like
alone,
eat
exactly.
like, you know, fruit flies or whatever.
And if you are going to go into their caves, I have friends who are cavers. Like, make sure you shower and clean first. You do not want to bring in white nose.
Hmm. And get a rabies shot. You can get one like just in case, which is a good idea.
I believe this podcast's official position is and has been: do not go in the caves.
That's true. That is absolutely true. Next slide, please. I thought the way we've vaguely structured this is, what are some of the ways that you can break the first layer of that onion? How can you detect anything, but in this case, like an aircraft, right? And the most obvious one is you look at it out of your window or whatever.
Yep. You say, "Hey, look at that thing."
I saw I was reading the Wikipedia page for the B-2 Spirit bomber, which will come up later. And the funniest sentence in there is the B-2 is visually detectable from like a 39 nautical mile range. And it's like, well, yeah, because it's a plane. Like, it's
a big
made of
plane.
stuff. Like,
Yes.
and so this is the most obvious way you can see stuff, is by looking at it. You give this guy an ocular pat down, photons bounce off the thing back into your eye.
Cleared him. He's not a security risk.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, this like is still sort of current in some senses, but like this kind of air observation thing used to be much more like formalized. I got a picture of the Royal Observer Corps on the top left here, and the idea is, like, you know, since World War I or whatever, you have this kind of fire watch type situation where you sight up the plane or whatever, and then you know the bearing, you can estimate the distance. This is a pain in the dick. Like, it's a lot of work. You get eye strain. If the guy has to like go and take a piss or like falls asleep, then you don't detect the thing.
And then your cities are gone, right?
Yeah. It's a big sky. You have to like search a lot of it. And generally speaking, you don't want to do this. It's not very reliable, right? It's a backup.
Can we talk about their fits for a second? Because
Yeah.
the lower right-hand side, that is fire.
That whole kind of like British wartime like women's wear situation, very, very powerful stuff.
Yes.
Big fan. Incidentally, you can't really see it, but the top left picture of the ROC guy, he's wearing like 50 different patches and metal ribbons and like badges and shit, because it was like a volunteer organization for like largely like ex-servicemen, right? This is not something that you, by the same token as it's being boring, it's not something you want to devote people who are like have a lot of other stuff going on to, you know, like your sort of highly technical specialized stuff you want not like staring until their eyes fall out. Next slide. Yeah, love all of this stuff.
Oh my God, this is our early podcasting rig.
This was a lot of fun to put together. All right. Going around the circle, on the left, we have sound location and equipment from Germany from 1939. I just love seeing fascists be silly.
Yes.
Like, they are trying to be serious, and they're looking into something that looks like it comes out of like a modern art sculpture museum. Like,
yeah, we're gonna
serious
achieve
work.
the master race through this flugelhorn.
Big loopy archy. Like, I'm sure this is a technical marvel, but I can't imagine taking my job seriously if I was sitting in front of one of these things.
It's goofy as hell. Plus, you spend all the time like doing this, listening in, and you know, then like a commando like sprints up from the beach and shoots you, and you die like an idiot. Like, yeah, this is so like other ways of detecting planes. If you can't see them, you can often hear them because engines are loud, particularly like propeller engines back in the day. And if you try and make that hearing directional, which is what all of this is an attempt to do, you get like kind of like, you know, you collect and reflect that sound into some dude's ears. Then he can then go, yeah, it sounds like there's an engine at such and such a bearing. You have located the thing. You've broken the onion.
The very top one, slight non sequitur, is called the war trombone. Okay?
Dudes rock.
It's like really, it was based off of brass instrumentation, like super cool. The upper right hand side, that's British, keeping it simple as always. Nice little cones.
Yeah.
Really big cones.
These guys. Okay, I was looking at this building back here, and I was like, is that the National War College? No, if it's British, it wouldn't be. But,
No, unlikely place for it to be, you know?
Yeah.
It's stately.
Hmm.
It's a very similar building.
Well, you do keep copying our fucking buildings. Don't think we don't notice.
Well, I do think the National War College was based on the Imperial War Museum or something like that.
Yeah, plausible.
I mean, to be fair, most of what America's done has been like doing what the British did, but louder and later.
Yes.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, so we got like the cones are twice as big.
I really like the bottom right one where it's just the two hemispheres.
Yeah.
Dutch parabolic sound amplifiers. It's unsure if these ever went into production, but they look like a fun hat. I love the era of people putting silly things on their head and being dead serious about it.
This is what like our equivalent of the 1920s equivalent of Devin had to do while editing the "Well, There's Your Problem" radio broadcast.
Right.
Yeah.
Hopefully we don't go like Father Coughlin.
This is like serious military infrastructure back in the day. So like all of these guys are like, there's nothing funny about this.
Okay.
Stop
The
taking
German
the
Mickey
photo
Mouse
of
goggles.
the Flugelhorn. The Flugelhorn is sehr geheim.
The goggles have reticles on them so that when you hear the plane, you just look through the reticles and that's supposed to tell you where the plane is. As if like the direction your head is facing isn't precise enough.
Incredible.
What's wrong with your face?
The thing is, I can't really find any evidence that these worked, is the other thing, like any of them. Lots of people tried. There were, as we see, there are like, this is across like 3 or 4 different militaries, like a bunch of attempts to do this, but like.
But even in early World War II, planes were going at a significant fraction of the speed of sound. Like, by the time you hear them, it's probably too late to react effectively if you haven't like known they were coming.
Or you can just see them at that point anyway, and you're back to square one. Like to slide 6.
Still haven't made a plane that flies at a significant fraction of the speed of light.
We're going through like emissions that a plane can like, you know, give you, right? Like one of them is photons. This one is like sound waves.
Phonons.
And then I don't know what else it does. Blue ice, I guess.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
It does a few other things.
Well, if it was World War II, it would have been lead poisoning.
Oh, good. Or
from the leaded avgas.
Also, there was a Nazi rocket that melted you instantly if you were a pilot.
Yeah, the fuel in the like ME-163 and stuff like
Red
that.
fuming nitric acid. Yeah, good stuff. Read Ignition by John Clark at some point.
I have. Fantastic
but
book.
Also, avgas still has lead in it.
It sure does.
Yeah.
I mean, for small piston engines, yes. It is a continual point of strife at the local airport.
Next slide.
Okay, we're just going to switch. We're doing brutalist architecture now. Sorry, this isn't stealth anymore. We're talking brutalism. We're talking the origins of the architectural theory here. We're talking about geometric shapes made out of the raw building material, exposed brick, exposed concrete. Actually, we're talking about sound horns again. Sorry.
Giant polling pockets for moving the island of Britain.
Just like, you know, you get a finger into each one of these. It's a kind of logical thing, right? To be like, well, what if we made the reflector bigger? And what if instead of it just going directly into a guy's like ear holes, you know,
they could go into everyone's ear holes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So these are in the land of Nova, the UK. They were interwar construction.
Yeah, we can just kind of demolish the idea that Britain wasn't thinking seriously about the Second World War breaking out ahead of time. Read David Edgerton's England and the Aeroplane for more on this. And yeah, like we built a lot of this stuff, actually.
I just think they're really cool. I wanted to include them.
Yeah.
It's perfectly valid.
I want to go visit them at some point. Should I ever be allowed to leave the nation after this podcast?
I like the big reflecting wall, the like big curved, like flat surface.
Yeah, I wonder if that one was for boats instead of planes, because it's like the angle of it would think you'd be picking things up off the surface more than you'd be thinking out of the sky.
Interesting.
Also, I've got a note here that like at the wavelengths of sound that a human ear is sensitive to, the smaller ones wouldn't have any issues with like constructive or destructive interference. but the larger wall might if it's not a parabola, if it's just an arc.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Could you listen to a podcast through these? Is
I
my
hope you
question.
don't.
That would really depend on the position of the speaker emitting the podcast noises.
I'm just hanging a Bluetooth speaker out the back of a like Heinkel like bomber that's like doing laps of the English Channel.
I
Actually,
think the
not.
signal will be lost in the engine noise. Yeah,
Damn.
sorry.
We don't actually make a podcast. We emit a podcast. I'm emitting a podcast.
That is
right
kind of
now.
true. Yeah, we secrete a podcast.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
a
like that.
secret.
I don't like that.
When startled, the podcaster secretes a thick
A
layer of
A
content.
thick layer of riffs. Yes.
Until the predator saves it and then goes away. Okay,
yeah,
fine.
yeah,
Yeah.
uh-huh.
Fair enough.
So other emissions, you know how your eyes work, right? Is
Not
you know,
really.
like, okay, well, so photons.
Well, okay, all right. Take that tone.
Photons come into them, right? Like,
Yes.
well, so what if you could emit some kind of, I don't know, beam, wave, whatever, and it bounces off of something when it hits it, and then you know that it does that because you receive it like photons into the eye. What if you did that with like electromagnetic waves? What if you did that with a slightly different kind of electromagnetic
God.
wave? What if you did this with a radio wave? Right? Because that's what radar is. And this is two examples of that.
Oh yeah, I've seen this in the first Warzone map. I remember this.
Yeah, so that's what these are. These are two radar emplacements from the early Warriors. The lower right-hand side is the German Freya radar. It had a shorter wavelength, roughly 1.2 meters or 3.9 feet for our imperialists in the audience. And Chain Home, the British equivalent, is in the upper left-hand corner. It had a much longer wavelength, 10 times longer at 12 meters. The 12-meter radar was probably the right choice for the time, to be fair. The smaller wavelength of the German radar would have allowed for detecting smaller planes, but planes aren't typically smaller than 12 meters. So the 12-meter radar will go a lot further through the atmosphere. Lower energy waves tend to penetrate gases better. There are exceptions. Do not quote me on this. But it generally meant that like it had more of an over-the-horizon kind of capacity, plus it was taller, and it had less interference with other sources of radio noise. You have to have a very long emitter to emit a 12-meter wavelength. A 1.2-meter wavelength could be done by plugging something into a wall socket with a 1.2-meter cable, could emit that same level, that same radio wavelength. Because you're looking at antenna length in these early non-modulated designs.
And I will also say, like, Chain Home is useful because you're looking to detect massed formations of planes rather than just one. Whereas, right, although the like German radar might be like technically more advanced, on the one hand, who won the fucking war anyway?
Exactly.
I'm surprised the Germans would over-engineer something to no benefit to themselves.
These freaks make cup holders difficult.
Yeah. Second point, they placed a bunch of these along the coast of France. And further to my joke about a commando coming up from the beach and shooting you while you look like an idiot using your big flugelhorn, that's exactly what they did with one of these. They captured a Würzburg radar off of the coast of France, an Operation Biting. It's a cool story. Just like fully like Grand Theft Autoing a radar, you know. But what are you gonna do? You put it on the coastline before you build the Atlantic Wall, yeah.
Yes.
That's a problem. Never do that.
But yeah,
You
so,
still do it twice.
yeah, but yeah. So you bounce the fucking radar wave off the thing. It detects the thing.
And
When
then
it
you
hit.
tell the civilian population about the anti-survivability carrots.
Oh,
Yes, but that was
Yeah.
that was a rumor that we saw because we didn't want to disclose the
that's right, that's
existence of
right.
radar. So we
And the
said,
British people ate lots of carrots. That's why they had good eyesight. They blamed it on vitamin A, I believe.
yes, yeah,
it's fucking
yeah.
genius.
I know this story because that's how my parents got me my vegetables when I was a kid.
And like you can advance this technology, you can scale this up, you can detect all kinds of stuff with it, you know.
Foreshadowing. Next slide, please.
Yes.
I remember this from Call of Duty Black Ops.
Oh,
Really
over
big
the horizon
radar was
radars.
mounted.
Oh, this is the one I was thinking of. Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes,
these
yes,
are
yes.
fun.
All right, so in the upper left, we have the US Navy relocatable over-the-horizon radar installation. Looking at the concrete pillars that hold these things up, I wonder exactly how relocatable the relocatable over-the-horizon radar was, or why you would need to relocate something that can see over the horizon already. But apparently it was.
In case the enemy moved the horizon.
I mean, there's nothing you
know-
can really see for scale here, but it doesn't look like that those footings are too crazy.
It's a bunch of
I-
guys with like jackhammers.
I believe they're on the scale of like roughly street lamps, like the big interstate highway street lamps.
Oh,
Huh.
that's going to take like, I don't know, like 2 or 3 days then. Fine, whatever.
I'm not a mechanical engineer. I just fly space planes. It's fine. Soviet radar.
that's not a job you can do. I just about.
yeah.
No, you don't have the concrete knowledge. You have the plain space knowledge.
Yeah, not a lot of concrete in a space plane, I imagine.
Not yet.
You've
I mean,
heard of
one day-
concrete
I
canoe.
could be
Now get rid of a
surprised,
concrete
you know?
space plane.
one day we're gonna figure out how to make
Wait
rockets
until nobody
really
hears about
big.
mass simulators.
If
Yeah.
the Soviet Union had never fallen, you know, Buran would still be up there delivering payloads of concrete
was
to
such a
like
pretty
Yeah.
bird.
to
Oh,
Mir
yeah.
3.
You have like a fucking Buran with like a big like cement mixer or concrete mixer drum on the back, you know.
Well, I mean, if you dropped concrete from orbit, it would be coherent enough to maintain cohesion through the atmosphere, but it would be silica materials and it would look like a meteorite by the time it hit the ground.
Hmm.
Like, you know, who's going to blame you for a meteorite? Just saying.
This is smart.
Clearly, I
think
wouldn't be disclosing national secrets. So if this is a thing that exists, check my record, make sure I didn't participate in it first. Cool, thanks.
Rocks from the gods.
Upper
think
right, Soviet radar.
I-
Chernobyl, this is radioactive now.
Yeah, they're
Oh.
big radioactive catch vents. So like Soviet radar systems are fun because they're not very good. We'll get to the stuff that communism makes you good at, but like
But they
particular.
made it bigger when it wasn't very good.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
there's something to be said about simplify and add weight.
Mhm.
I mean, not so much in this case because for a long time, one of the like most likely contributory factors to the end of human life was that the Soviet Union had remarkably shit early warning for like nuclear weapons,
And something like this would be very vulnerable to a CME,
Mhm.
coronal mass ejection, for those of us not in space science. The sun burps. When the sun burps, it sends a bunch of plasma, ionized gases to the Earth's atmosphere. It interacts with the magnetosphere of the Earth, the thing that makes your compass point north. And that creates basically lots and lots of magnetic and electrical energy that reaches the surface on large, long wires like the Drugo radar here. You could set the thing on fire should you just be in the wrong time zone for a solar flare.
Yeah, they built 2 of these, one of which is in Chernobyl. And yeah, it's not very good. But they did give number stations enthusiasts something to get confused about because
Yes.
like this emitted into shortwave radio. And so you would get this weird kind of tapping sound coming from Russia. You could like geolocate this pretty readily because it's a really strong signal. And a bunch of people went nuts trying to work out what this was, you know?
Wouldn't that be Ukraine, not Russia?
Yeah, excuse me. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
I did the like England Britain thing. Shoot
Yeah,
me.
here I am, supposed to be the guy with the contrarian Ukraine takes, and yet
Well, I conflated Russia and the Soviet Union, which is a bit more
yeah.
understandable, I hope. Sorry. My apologies to the Ukrainian SSR where this was.
I've been waiting for an opportunity to make a joke about Khrushchev recently, but I don't know when it's going to happen.
Mm.
Find time,
On account of Khrushchev. Khrushchev was born in Ukraine, and he was the Ukrainian leader of the Soviet Union. It's like, well, no, he was born in what's the thing next to Ukraine? Kursk. It's like, it's Ukrainian now, bitch. Anyway,
Is that just like a capturing the king gambit where you just like now you just own Russia if you capture the hometown of the leader?
if you captured the hometown of Khrushchev, then he like rises from the grave in like the separate, like next to the Lenin mausoleum, there's a Khrushchev mausoleum no one goes to.
It's like the same pyramid arrangement was smaller.
Yeah.
I really like this.
Khrushchev beats up Putin.
Is it a radome if it's like sort of this faceted triangle situation?
No, this thing where you can see where technology killed art. This cubist structure is it's a PAVE system. It is a phased array radar system. Those big flat panels are a grid of independent emitters, and by changing the phase at the exit port of each of those emitters, you can basically point a beam through constructive or destructive interference along different axes away from that flat plane. So you can steer this radar without ever actually moving the emitter. It means you can build bigger installations. Those installations can have much more focused beams than you would get without a phased system. And it also helps avoid lobes. Now, lobes aren't generally a problem in consumer electronics, but when you're emitting at high powers, you do not want to cook the engineer who's standing exactly behind the emitter with the back lobe. Fun story, that's how microwave ovens were invented. Radar ovens was someone walked out on a radar test range with a candy bar in his pocket. When the chocolate started melting through his pants, he got out of the way and they tried to figure out why and turned it into radar ovens.
Nice.
Microwaves. Fun story.
It's cool that you just have like a magnetron in your house now, you know?
Yes.
Like back in the day, an extreme, again, like the Flugelhorn or whatever, like an extremely secret piece of military technology that had to be like sort of like precision machined and like, you know, sort of like conveyed on secret flights. And it's sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, and it's arc from like prestige equipment to like our cruise ship has a radar oven to cook your meals to now like it's the if you have to microwave something, you fail as a human being.
Mm-hmm.
Hey kids, do you need a source of incredibly high voltage? Well, you know, there's a source right within your very own home in your microwave. Take it apart and fiddle with it. It'll be fun.
Yeah, genuinely, like one of the most dangerous things in
Do I need to
your
pretend like I can't, like my voice stopped coming through? Do I need to pretend like I've disconnected? Because like I do not want to be part of telling kids to take apart. Do not take apart a microwave. It will kill you. If it doesn't kill you, it will try to kill you. If it doesn't try to kill you,
fuck you.
You haven't dug deep enough.
Look, it used to be all you had to do was take apart the television to get killed by electronics. Now you got to take apart the microwave.
True. A cathode ray tube, again, like incredible time. Anyway, all of this is to say that like you can detect an aircraft with radar, right? That's it. That's why we're going with this.
There are other ways.
Mm-hmm.
Next slide, please.
Oh God, this is the brain rot coming through on this one. This is my slide. I'm not responsible for all of this.
Weebs with radar. So the way you detect a weeb with radar. No, actually, this is about IR or infrared emissions.
Yeah.
Heat. Short, but not short enough to be visible electromagnetic radiation.
Mm-hmm. It's sort of like all we're doing here is we're shifting around like sort of like bands, right? You can detect heat that is emitted by, for instance, an engine, or I don't know, running all the electronics on a plane too. And planes emit a lot of heat, and you can detect it with like infrared search and track systems, IRST. And there's a number of applications for this. It works pretty well on like shorter range stuff, like missiles, like air-to-air missiles. When Raytheon Sidewinder is doing her like intense growling, that's what she's doing, right? That's like the heat seeking in a heat seeking missile, right?
Notoriously hard to defend against IR when you are doing a survivability platform. IR is emitted by anything that creates friction. So like your body heat is emitting IR at detectable wavelengths. You've seen FLIR cameras in common use today.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't really the time when the AM9 was developed, but now you can go to the store like Best Buy and get yourself a FLIR attachment for your camera. This is a fun thing to do if you have disposable income. I don't. I wish I did. There are planes that have tried to hide their IR signature with varying degrees of success. To hide your IR, you have to go slow enough that the air doesn't create enough friction to heat you up. You have to dump your waste heat in a way that like doesn't heat you up too much. The F-117 did a good job of distributing exhaust through a long, thin slit. More on that later. The YF-23 buried its exhaust in exhaust channels. Along the top side of the surface of the back of the aircraft, there are these like steel-lined gutters. those help mix the exhaust gases with cold outside air in such a way that, like, when the exhaust passes the bottom of the tail, when seen from below, you don't have like glowing atmospheric gas that you can detect with a ground to air system. That said, and notoriously hard to defend against, it was tried a few times and never actually made it into wide service.
There was one other thing, one other source of emissions that I wanted to include but didn't deserve a slide of its own, because it's like, as of yet that I know about, it's not really a kind of useful thing in the broader sense, which is one thing that planes increasingly emit is radar emissions. It's what an anti-radiation missile is. Not as cool as the name suggests.
Tacit Blue actually investigated ways of avoiding that. We'll get to that.
But so you could, for instance, that's an emission. You can find the thing with that emission. As far as I think Russia claimed to have come up with like an air-to-air anti-radiation missile. I don't know.
But the thing is, when you see the big, bright, hot rocket exhaust of the missile heading toward you, you can turn off your radar. It's relatively straightforward. You turn something off in that way. A magnetron doesn't have spinning and moving parts. You stop providing power, it stops emitting radar.
Yeah, you just gotta hit the pause button on a microwave.
Yeah, the microwave you have in your F-18, right? Of course.
If someone's cooking a hot pocket in the back of the airplane, you're screwed. It's over. Last note on this slide is the gray. I'm not sure what to call it. Anthropomorphized YF-23. That red tramp stamp. Black Widow spider hourglass, that's on the wrong side of her bodysuit. That should be closer to the navel end on her front. We'll see a slide about that later.
Nice.
Good to know.
It's just a very like sort of like poisoned slide we put together here.
Yes.
When I started it was just the Sidewinder go.
I will have you know that I pulled the far right bottom corner image out of a conversation I had with an Australian friend directly from my Discord and straight into here, and I was the one who edited it, but not for this podcast. So like before I knew about dangerous levels of internet poisoning, I'm autistic and I like the YF-23. You're welcome. That's all I had for this slide. Do we want to?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, here we are.
All right. So after we started realizing that you can see planes because they're visible.
Real shame.
Satellites were also a thing in the 60s going on into the current era. These pictures on the right-hand side of this screen are from commercially available images on the internet. The upper right-hand corner is the storage ramp at Edwards Air Force Base. I've been there. I knew it was there, so I knew to look for things. But like you
nice
can
B1
see
in there.
Right, there's a B1. There's something with like 2 wings and 2 booms going on.
There's an RC-135 rivet joint behind it as well.
There's some interesting ones in this thing. There's also what looks like an old, like early jet, the like a meteor maybe. Upper right-hand corner of that the kind of the trapezoidal wings.
Some weird shit on these.
And I'm not sure what's going on. On the left-hand side, there's a white plane with 2 wings. Looks like a almost full-size canard, a main wing, 2 booms, and a high tail. Not sure what's going on there, but looks cool. I'd accuse Burt Rutan of that, but I'm not sure that he's even that crazy. So who knows? I think there's a swing wing F something. I'm forgetting it. The pre F-14 swing wing aircraft.
Oh God, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. But
like my brain knows exactly what it looks like, but I couldn't tell you the F number because my ADHD meds have worn off.
And then there's like just a DC-3.
Those are probably EM platforms or like research platforms because the DC-3 has been around forever and has really, you can't break its avionics with a glitchy radio emission system. And I can't talk about more about that because I worked at Edwards. I cannot talk about this because I don't have the reference in front of me.
It's just all of which is to say it's cool that thanks to Google you can do spying that the KGB would have killed for the ability to do for free in the comfort of your own home and not even get in trouble.
Yeah, the upper right image was provided courtesy of the National Weather Service, and the lower right image is courtesy of Google Maps. That is a B-2 Spirit stealth bomber caught just over a field in the southeastern United States.
That's wild.
She's moving.
It used to be to divulge this sort of information. They would seduce you with a sexy KGB lady.
No, we don't get
Now,
anything.
it's just internet bullshit.
Yeah, the problem with open source intelligence before it became a name for like guys on Twitter posting like gore footage from Ukraine is that like there's a lot of very useful intelligence that's just out there now. I guess there always was, but like now, it's more, precise, I guess.
And the last part of this slide is the DSP-16 satellite launched on STS-44.
I love the fucking military shuttle missions where it's like, yeah, this one, yeah, technically we're still doing all the NASA yay space stuff. The like flight crew photo, it's like 4 military officers, none of them are smiling. Payload classified. Fuck you. Mission patch classified.
Fuck you.
Right.
What's it doing up there? Fuck you.
Fuck you.
Times like this, I'm really glad that they made the Air Force back down on having their own shuttle, apart from, well, mostly.
I mean, they definitely do. We'll talk about that in 3 slides.
I know, but I'm glad that for all of this stuff, they made them use NASA for it, and you just had to co-locate the like alternate shuttle missions where it's like STS-43 is like teacher in space, first person to like
teacher almost in space.
Shoot the high school with my dad.
Yeah. But you know what it is. It's like they're doing like, chemistry lessons up there, or they're learning about how to grow a different kind of moss. And then STS-44 is like, what does this one do? None of your fucking business, son.
It's one of the few that they actually mentioned what the satellite was and what it did to like a very broad way. It's an IR detection satellite. The suspicion is that it's part of the infrared early detection or IRAD system. It's possible that it isn't, but like we've already established that from space you can see a lot of things.
You know what puts out a fuck of a lot of infrared emissions is a ballistic missile.
That is true,
That is
as
true.
do most jet engines. You are burning a lot of fuel. They have visible flame.
The problem with classified payloads is like, it sounds more interesting than it is because I'm sure it's like, oh, it's a better camera. Oh, it's a better camera. Oh, it's a better camera. What do you think they're sending up this time? Oh, it's a better camera.
The great time about working on classified payloads is that people say if it's boring, you can say it's classified, and if it's not boring, you still have to say it's classified.
I don't know. I think the like boring incremental camera upgrades probably feel good as hell if you're a like intelligence officer.
That's
like,
true, yeah.
When I get a new camera, I feel great. If that new camera costs like $140 billion and I work in the National Reconnaissance Office, I probably feel 140 billion times better than
Oh,
that.
hell yeah.
I refuse to say anything about cameras for at least a minute because if Nova hears that I like Fuji and that I like shooting digital, she's going to be mad.
I'm not going to be. I have a Fuji digital. I would.
You do? Okay. I've got the XS20 and I'm shooting it on a 50 millimeter, a 1.5 anamorphic Sairui lens.
Ooh.
So the manual, like cinema lens, the oval bokeh, you can shoot stills on it just fine. It's gorgeous.
Ah.
Like
It's
it has
lovely.
just enough imperfection to have character, but it has like every picture looks like a still from a movie. It is so good. Like I have a clinically sharp super telephoto for shooting paragliders.
Wow.
And I have this lens that I carry everywhere else because every picture just is gorgeous.
Mm.
Anyway,
What if you used the shuttle to steal a military camera satellite and use
Isn't
that
that just-
for your own camera?
that you can't. Okay.
Haven't
so
you just given us the plot of Moonraker?
it's the plot of Moonraker. It's also a real thing. Like, I venture to suggest this is an area that like is not widely spoken about for good reason. But like, I would be amazed if no one had come up with the idea of like kidnapping a satellite, or indeed if it hadn't been done. Already.
that was part of the mission parameters for the design of the space shuttle was that it had to be able to rendezvous with a satellite in an orbit that could only have launched from the Cosmodrome and return to the U.S. Like that was literally one of the missions it was designed to do was to capture a Soviet satellite.
Yeah, I'm just adding the extra things
Watch
that
the
then you
Baikonur.
use the satellite for, like street photography.
Yeah.
I hate to burst your bubble, but like under 1G of gravity, because satellites are built to be as lightweight as possible, because lifting launch mass is expensive, the structural stability of the camera would be so compromised that you wouldn't have optical alignment under 1G, of course. Sorry.
Oh, God damn it.
Just me being like, nah, it's fine. I don't need a tripod. Incidentally, I went on a really good podcast called Failure to Launch about the time that the CIA kidnapped a satellite that hadn't even left Earth yet.
Jesus.
Oh, cool.
Right, actually, it had left Earth. It had come back to Earth, and the Soviets just like put it on like display, and the CIA kind of kidnapped it. It was a interesting story.
They did they
Heist music
Ocean's
starts
11
playing.
did.
I
Yeah,
mean, the
literally.
Huron
Yeah.
shuttle, to my knowledge, is still in that like rotting away in a hangar. We could, girls'
Yeah,
night.
I thought they just moved it. I'm pretty sure it's going to a
I'm
museum now. I'm
uncertain,
not sure. though.
uncertain.
Well, museum is actually easier to get to rather than a locked hangar. Honestly, it's on
Mm.
display. You can just walk up and scope the place easily. We'll we'll use Mia for local intelligence. We'll use Victoria for our getaway driver. It'll work.
I mean, yeah, no, perfect.
Next slide, please. I think
In the
we've
first all trans heist.
I
yeah.
put in a slide for us to wantonly speculate about weather satellites and other Earth-observing systems and their use as military assets for detection and surveillance. It is surprising how many Earth-observing weather satellite jobs require a top-secret clearance.
Mm.
Justin, would you be so kind as to click the link in the slide notes?
Ooh, hold on. Let me see.
Oh,
if
I
can.
don't know what those coordinates go to, but I can take an educated guess. Allow weathercams.faa.gov to access your location. Well,
Hold on a second. I'm having some trouble clicking this from PowerPoint.
Justin, it's your house. It's an image of your house.
Is it an image of? I don't believe
Yes,
you.
yes, it is. It literally is. Ross, don't open that.
No, I'm
it's
gonna
like
do
an
it.
alarmingly high resolution image of your
Yeah.
house.
Yeah, that's yeah. Oh, and look! What a surprise! So it's blocking the gate.
Okay, so like when I say that like the satellites that observe the Earth observe the whole heckin' Earth, like if you have a distinctive hat, we can track you with weather satellites. No military knowledge required. I'm putting military in air quotes here. You can't see it on the podcast because anything that observes the Earth is an intel source, and whether we're looking at like the weather patterns, or we're looking for contrails, or we're looking for soil moisture, or we're looking for like, that's a weird place. It looks like there's tunnels dug underground because there's not enough soil moisture.
Man, this is crispy.
Oh, that
right?
is my house.
Yeah, they got this on a big screen in the Department of Energy.
2 people are blocking the driveway.
Yeah, they fucking do that. Oh, where's
We're
my
getting,
house?
bearing in mind that we did Bethnal Green and I nearly doxed Trash Future. The fact that we're getting more and more precise, I'm half expecting to see a slide in the next one that's just in my window, me looking out of the camera, just like, what?
In before Justin starts wondering how I knew where he lived.
This
How
is
did you know how I
you
lived?
could probably reverse engineer that if you're enough of a psycho. Just from stuff I posted on Twitter. I but that seems relatively easy. But this is okay. So the grill is in the old location. They haven't put the pallets up. The driveway is looking a little nicer than it does right. And this is before I got the benches from June. Yeah, okay. I'm not saying you're not a psycho for putting this in. I'm just saying I can see how you did it.
I did do the screenshot for a reason. Don't worry about it. I'm not that crazy. But I just wanted to say hi in my own way.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so right now, radar is one of the many tools used to detect aircraft and stealth things. Satellites, which we'll talk about more in the ship part of the episode, are more vulnerable to satellites than they are to radar because they're pretty close to the ground, and most radar has a radar floor where the noise of the reflections off of the ground buries any signal that you'd get from a returning airplane. This is a key feature of the 2005 movie Stealth and the
There we
Maverick,
go.
and
Stopping
Top
the big
Gun
timer.
Maverick from a more recent blockbuster.
Mm.
Oh,
They all talk about flying under the radar floor. With satellites, you don't really have a floor if you're not actually underground pretty far.
We have to cover the Earth in a big tarp.
yes.
Sherwin-Williams, give us your money.
Mm.
Alt that paved the earth.
Yeah. So, roughly speaking, we now move to the next sort of arc of the podcast, which is if these are all your ways of detecting an aircraft or whatever, something that doesn't want to be detected, what can you do about this, right? What sort of countermeasures exist? And one of them is, what if balloon? What if big balloon? If it's stupid and it
there's a
works, it
balloon?
isn't stupid.
Yes.
Arguable if this works, you know?
They're pretty easy to spot. We knew about them on radar for a while. We thought they were weather balloons at first, to my knowledge. And when you do find them, you don't really need a $67 billion fighter program to pop them, although the US decided to use one to do the same.
Funnily
The
enough,
F-22 hadn't had any aerial kills yet, hadn't had any kills of any kind. So they were like, well, we spent 4 years of...
it's got that sweet high altitude capability, you know.
This is a weekend I lost a lot of sanity points because East Palestine happened the same time.
Yeah.
Right?
And what was the leading news story? We popped the balloon.
Well, yeah, it's better to talk about using a... So we're gonna rank defense programs in costs of... because Americans don't like using real units, we're not going to measure it in billions of dollars. We're going to measure it in years of ending homelessness. So per many news sources, you can check them on yourself or you can ask me directly for them. It would cost less than $10 billion per year to make sure there was not a single homeless person in the US. No one would die of exposure. The social contract would remain intact. This fighter program cost 7 years of ending homelessness in the US, and we have popped 2 balloons with it.
I fucking hate this place.
I do like about the balloon, right? The idea that like clearly the US is not the like only military bureaucracy in the world that can waste money, right? And like curiously, there is an inversion here because the CIA tried this on China with surveillance balloons before, and it was a massive waste of money. Like only like 3 of them even got any useful like images back.
It's very hard to steer a balloon classically.
Yeah, and I really love the idea that like doing this in reverse is partially a provocation maybe, but also just as like this shit doesn't work, but we got to preserve our phony baloney jobs, you know? This is like the United States of America is going to find out why we don't have free healthcare.
I see this as the equivalent of like throwing spitballs within the UN. Like, like they're just poking you to annoy you. Like this is a thing that they did.
Wet willy.
Like kids' helium balloon with a like camera
and
dangling.
America's hilarious overreaction of firing an actual missile at a balloon. That balloon was less expensive than the munition used to down it. Like between the cost of the F-22's fuel, the pilot's training, the missile, we came out, to use an EVE Online term, ISK negative on this encounter.
I mean, they kind of threw everything out. I remember seeing photos of it of the like balloon taken from the cockpit of a U-2, and I'm like, man, dude, get another balloon. Like,
famously, balloons are hard to steer.
I just noticed from the earlier picture.
Oh boy.
That the building 8 doors down has a really nice balcony I've never seen before because you can't see it at street level.
Oh shit, that is a really nice balcony actually.
Yeah.
Wow. Huh. Ah, that's nice with a nice like like gabling on that. Wow.
Oh yeah, it's got a nice gable. You know this. We got a lot of nice houses in this neighborhood. Anyway,
this is the funniest reaction anyone's ever had to being doxxed. Next slide, please. So
look, there were 2 ways it could go, and one of them involved me screaming and shutting down the podcast.
So, this isn't exactly related. I just wanted to talk about it. This is the X-37B. What the hell is Joe Biden building in there? Like, what the hell are they doing? I know.
Solid block of Kerrygold.
putting one into an eccentric orbit. No, I know this is a question that cannot be answered, at least by anyone who doesn't want to go to federal prison, right? But what the hell are they doing with this fucking thing?
Thankfully, this is an area I've actually got no direct personal knowledge, so I can speculate wildly with the best of them.
It's just up there doing stuff. It's
personal theory. There are crystalline structures that are difficult to grow under gravity. I also might have read Artemis too recently.
I sometimes wish, right, that I'd never gotten mental health. I'd never started posting. I was like fully like on the straight and narrow, so that I could be the like highly cleared cog in the like highly compartmentalized machine, just to satisfy my own personal curiosity about what the hell Joe Biden is putting in space. And now for work, right, I get to talk to people who have been highly cleared cogs in the machine, and they won't tell me either.
Fuckers.
If
I
I
could-
told
So
you, I
it's
wouldn't
like-
get to listen to more episodes of the podcast.
It's
I
like
can
what,
be
they're like-
trusted with classified information. I
You
swear.
cannot be.
They're like growing turbine blades in there, and like, you know, in 20 years, it's just going to be common knowledge, and they're going to be on like the latest, you know, zombie version of the 737.
Honestly, given the orbit, I suspect that it's more of it has something with a lens on it that goes that they open the bay doors, and that's what that's what they're doing
Huh.
with it.
I see.
It's a very highly elliptical Earth orbit. It's, I believe, Sun synchronous. Correct me if I'm wrong. Actually, do and engage with the comments below, like and subscribe. The angle of it suggests to me that this is an observation mission, because there's nothing you would need to do in space for nearly a straight year, completely unmanned, other than observe things.
Like
Yeah,
Joe Biden has
it's
built the
another-
Earth
it's
a
another
selfie
camera.
stick. Yeah.
But, like-
Another fucking camera.
I mean,
Like a really, really big one.
It's hoping it'd
space
be
is big and
aliens.
empty and tries to kill humans. I don't know why we're in space. I like sending cameras into space. I'd love to go to a different planet, but I don't want to spend any time in the in-between. Like, I want to go to France and I want to do it on a boat. That'd be fun, but I don't want to spend a lot of time on the water. That just seems like a bad idea.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
I've been to France on a boat.
Yeah, me too. I was with you actually.
yeah, we both went to France on a. You gotta take the short way.
Next slide, please. All right, so ways that you can like counter all of these things. Well, the obvious thing, my plane is being seen by people. Don't get seen, or
get
don't.
seen.
Yeah, so back to camouflage again. Yeah, camouflage in the sense of like hiding the thing from sight rather than crypsis. This is the first stealth aircraft in the sense of they painted it slightly differently. I get to talk about Nevo again.
It's a beautiful. It's like a dark British racing green. Y'all have good greens over there.
Good green.
Yeah. This is if you missed the camouflage episode, this is Night Invisible Varnish Orford Ness, named for the
Ooh.
place where they developed it. They have really good names for stuff as well back in the day. Talked about it on camouflage. The deal is that this makes it like blend into night better. It doesn't really work, is the thing. As far as these things go, this does kind of prefigure the fact that every military aircraft now is painted in a kind of, or is just a kind of like shitty gray color and has a low visibility roundel, which also sucks. So yeah, still state of the art in that sense, I suppose.
For our viewers, the hex code for this color is 404735.
Nice.
Just in case you wanted to type that up and look at it.
And this is, to be clear, is like a biplane, like an interwar biplane. Next slide, please.
Okay, so my classical education is in aerospace engineering with a lean toward computational fluid dynamics. And I'm here to talk to you about aerodynamics and why stealth doesn't like it. Now, you could brace for a 3-hour episode upon the Reynolds and Maxwell's equations, but we're not going to do that. We're going to keep it simple. Air lights,
We're still
round
gonna do a
things.
3-hour episode. It looks like, but
Absolutely.
But it's not just on this topic.
yeah.
Right? We're going to go on to other slides. Okay, so the air likes things that are round, and round things are easy to see. Sharp things are hard to see, and the air doesn't like sharp things. We'll get into more about that later. So there are a few different ways to avoid being killed in an airplane. And we're talking specifically about airplanes here because it's harder to hide things like tanks that you can just kind of walk up to. But things that are high up in the sky and far away are hard to get to, hard to kill by kind of default. With missiles, it becomes easier. So you have a few options to fly a plane that's survivable and not be stealthy. And the first one is fly very fast. This is a classic because boys like to go fast and be loud.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm a huge fan of it too. Why not? Fly high. As a paraglider, this is kind of my wheelhouse. And flying high is dangerous. It's about as dangerous as going very fast, right? You're either dealing with very little air or very fast air, both of which can screw you up in their own unique and interestingly horrifying ways. The third option, which no one has been stupid enough to try, although the B-1B came close as a military strategy for doing this, was to fly low, which is very dangerous. You can run into things when they're on the ground, right?
Yes.
If you're high enough up, like you'd rather have altitude than attitude any day. I don't care what the motivational poster says. If you're high enough up, you got time to fix your shit. if you have a good attitude but you're flying to the side of a mountain, there's no amount of positive optimism that's going to help you out here. Altitude over attitude any day.
Just really like the idea of like this stealth reconnaissance platform that is screaming past 10 feet above you.
Wasn't that the idea of like the flying crowbar bomb?
Oh god, yeah. We'll get to war crimes. Don't you worry.
It's out of scope.
It is something that works with like very, very small drones. Watch this space. You know, you may be killed by one in future.
If you can't fly low because it's very dangerous, well, and flying fast or flying high isn't enough to keep you safe, your next best option is to fly high and fly high and fly fast. Sorry. This is very dangerous because you have the combined dangers of high velocities and high altitude. No one has been stupid enough to try the fifth option, which is to fly low and fly fast. Again, the B-1B was the U.S. Air Force kind of dipping its toe in the idea, but we realized how dumb of an idea it is. Because
raise hell, praise Dale.
Pardon?
I said, raise hell, praise Dale, burn down an Applebee's.
The NASCAR approach, then.
Yeah.
Governments usually frown on having their not yet armed nuclear weapons scattered across enemy countryside because the GPS maps just didn't update fast enough in the glass cockpit. We don't want to deliver bombs at high velocities without them exploding after we've delivered them, in theory, as a military strategy. These are all better options, though, than the options of being stealthy, which is to fly a plane the air doesn't like. Famously, you do not want to fly a plane the air doesn't like, because then it won't fly.
I mean, kind of the whole history of combat aircraft has been like edging up on the most the air can dislike a plane, right? Because like in the sort of First World War, the major sort of like strategy of aircraft building that everyone went into with was having an aerodynamically stable plane, right? Which is like very, very safe. Doesn't work.
And the more and better computer-aided control became, the faster you could have that control loop, the more control surface area you could articulate, the faster you could articulate it, the more dynamically unstable and statically unstable you could make that plane before it was completely unflyable. We will get into that when we start talking, I think, Half Blue.
But I mean, just to know that like particularly like a fighter aircraft, even as early as like 1916, right, needed to be aerodynamically unstable in order to maneuver quickly, right? And this sort of set us on the trajectory of like fucking around with the air more and more until it finally peaked in our rejection of God when one Polish man invented the helicopter.
Yes.
So yes. There's a fun little note that I want to make here is that if you go supersonic, you become more stable. The center of pressure of a subsonic wing is about 1/4 chord back, which is 1/4 the length of the forward back length of the wing. If you go supersonic, because pressure can't propagate forward, complicated reasons why, talk to me after class if you want to know more about it. The center of pressure for the wing moves from the 1/4 chord to the 1/2 chord. This wouldn't do a whole lot to like a really high aspect ratio wing like the U-2, but if you're looking at like a really triangular wing, like you'd see on the F-15, the F-16, the F-18, the F-22, or the F-35, when that center pressure moves back, it goes from being unstable to stable. This really reduces a lot of strain on the airframe during supersonic flight, when you have other stresses to deal with, and you don't need the flutter messing with your aligned structural elements against the pressure of the onrushing air.
It's also why they tried to fuck around with variable geometry wings on supersonic aircraft, and that seems to have generally not worked very well.
They worked fantastically from an aerodynamic perspective. The weight of the wing sweep mechanism and the failure-prone aspects of that design were a huge problem. But there was a cool plane that had an oblique wing. It had a single pivot point, and the whole wing would rotate. One tip would go forward, one tip would go back. Pilots were always surprised that it was as stable as it was. Not in scope, but
getting
if you
dangerously
ever do the Next Planes episode, please have me back.
Getting dangerously close to the sort of nightmare I always have when flying, which is I push the button on the seat and one of the wings falls off.
Oh, it's weird they put that button there.
Yeah, well, you know.
I mean, it's what you put a bunch of engineers in a place where you should have an industrial designer. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so this is
Oh,
the
Beautiful.
fly fast section.
Whoosh.
If you look toward the back, you will see a red tail. Will you John Madden that for me? Perfect. That is the F-104 Starfighter, of which there already is a bonus episode, so I
It
won't say further.
lusts for blood.
Yes.
And in this episode, it shall receive the gorgeous bird in the middle of the frame is the XB-70 Valkyrie.
Or War Concord.
It is
They're
is so pretty.
they're such pretty planes. Yeah, they look great.
Every part of its design was just like very much its own thing. It came together well. It's a bunch of unique shapes that all kind of blend. How does that sharp triangular wing merge with the big boxy jet engine enclosure, merge with the sleek cylindrical arcing fuselage? Like, how does this all work together as flawlessly as it does? This is art in motion.
It's got the wing tips that droop down, and it's like you never seen that as an aerodynamic feature before.
Right. This was the US's answer to, well, what if missiles? We're like, well, if this is already in the air, you can't hit it with a missile, and it can still get to you and drop bombs in a time enough that you should be worried about it.
So while we were doing the Avro Vulcan, which also rules but is not quite as dramatic as this. Vulcan slander, I know.
This is just a gorgeous bird. I get speechless when I see it. Next slide, please. Well, like we said, flying high was dangerous. Flying fast is dangerous. This was kind of doing both. You can see the clouds below them. So what happened here is the F-104 Starfighter fell for its bloodlust. It couldn't hold back anymore.
I can't take it anymore.
Interview with a vampire.
Oh, look, it kind of looks like a civilian airliner.
No, it's just like confusing the Valkyrie with like a West German ditch, you know?
This was the end of the XB-70 program. One, because the technology has been proven, but at the time that this plane was flying, they had realized that radar and missile technology had advanced to the point that it couldn't do high enough or fast enough. So they used this as a convenient excuse to ground the birds, and now there's a gorgeous one in a museum that you can go visit. I recommend you do. And then maybe you will suffer the same way I have in the aerospace industry. The rest of the information is... Go ahead.
I'm just reading the notes here. Ejecting from the XB-70 is quite something.
Yes, the both pilots, I believe, had fitted ejector seats. At one point, there was an intention to, instead of having ejection seats for the pilots, to have an ejection pod where the entire cockpit would separate.
Cool.
Like a pod inside the cockpit shell would be launched out as a unit, and all of the crew would go with it. I do not believe that at the time that this happened that... Oh, no, they did have a prototype of it in place. The closing clamshell-like escape crew capsule did dismember one of the crew.
Less yes. Cool.
Yeah.
Maybe slightly cool. Depends. Depends how you feel about that.
How did you get dismembered like that? I was in a supersonic airplane. Now, how did you really get dismembered?
It's a pretty cool story.
Barrett's supersonic privateers? Like, incredible.
Just the parachute failing to deploy, and you just crash through a Halifax pier.
Shall we? Let's just keep going. I don't want to get hung up on this one. This was just for the viewer's pleasure.
Yeah. What if you went high and fast, but instead of delivering nuclear bombs, you took photos of the places that you wanted to deliver nuclear bombs, and then you brought that camera home?
That's a lot cheaper than flying cameras with rolls of film into space and then dropping the film from space and trying to catch it midair, which was a thing that we did.
Mm-hmm.
So the U-2. Go ahead.
Everything about the U-2 is just like some absolute... I say this as a high compliment, like Air Force cowboy shit. Like, and we'll get to why. I have a couple of slides about this.
Yeah, it's also kind of a quaint design. Like, it's very traditional in its aerodynamics, long, narrow wings, kind of a lumpy fuselage even. They weren't trying to make it look cool. They were purely focused on if this brand of mass does not make it fly higher or better, then it does not go on the plane. and they did a really good job designing a plane not for a committee. And it's
Hey,
just
you
so
think it needs
pretty.
landing gear? No.
It has a landing gear.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it.
The,
It
the
doesn't
thi-
have the intrinsic plural, but it has a landing gear.
so the crazy thing about this is that they brought these in the 50s, and they're still going. Like,
Yeah.
to I put this in brackets in the notes with transgender analogy commencing. They're the like Calvin Klein bralettes of the U.S. Air Force. You know, like, no matter how many times you try and move on to something sexier, they're too useful to give up.
They never worked for me.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh well. I mean,
Like, I bought one. It's like pride colored and everything, and it just doesn't. It doesn't do
Ah.
whatever it's supposed to do for me. I'd rather just wear something nice or not wear anything at all.
I'm
Viewers,
slumming it.
Keep
Like
your eyes to yourself.
No, I genuinely like this is a sort of like you would have to get me to sign a strategic treaty to get me to like draw down the numbers of these fucking bralettes I own.
To each their own. It doesn't work for me.
We must avoid a bralette cap.
I like having them. I don't like having to contain them.
Yeah, the U2 is a cool plane. However, like if we go to the next slide,
that fit though.
Yeah,
That's
you know
pretty
how I
good.
said this the like space cowboy shit. So
I
one of
went
the
as,
things
I went for Halloween. I went as a oil tank near an airfield.
but so the principle of the U2 is you fly really high, as really fast, and like it doesn't matter if you're detected because like nobody's gonna hit you. What are they gonna do? You're taking the photons have already gone on the camera. However, the immortal science of Marxism-Leninism, it turns out, gives you a real stat boost to developing surface-to-air missiles. This will come up a couple of times. And so this is Gary Powers, Francis Gary Powers, if you want the full name. Seen here before, and I describe every time a plane gets shot down in these notes as getting lamaud, which is probably like, you know, tonally disrespectful of me. But
He lived, right?
yeah, he did. But
Yeah.
like he did get the U2 shot down over the Soviet Union. I do want to note one detail about this that I found very funny. The CIA gave pilots a suicide pill, which is full of like shellfish toxin. Except they just gave them it as like a loose pill. And they realized they had to change that when one of the pilots like almost ate one like candy in the cockpit, unprovoked, just out of
Accidentally.
boredom. Yeah. So then they replaced it with they put them into boxes to avoid confusion, and then they realized, oh, if this breaks in the cockpit, the good guy just dies anyway. So they ended up having to like create this kind of secret coin with a poison needle in there, which they gave Powers and which he didn't use because he didn't feel like it. Which fair enough.
No, that's that was the correct decision.
Yeah, I mean, in the sort of the depths of the Cold War, like Khrushchev is there. You're not getting like sent to a Siberian prison to have like your nuts whipped with a snow shovel for the rest of your life.
Yeah, exactly.
You're going home in like 2 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not scared of that guy. He's Ukrainian.
It's embarrassing rather than anything else. I'm not going to
Yeah.
shellfish toxin myself over it.
Exactly.
But yeah, so
He'll
these
probably
things
invite me to his dacha.
these things are clearly like not invulnerable to the increasing altitude ceiling of like surface-to-air missiles developed by communists. Also, one of them manages to crash in the Cuban Missile Crisis because the guy just like lost consciousness because he ran out of oxygen and just nosedived it into the Caribbean. So you know.
See point number 2 about being very high, being dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Did we lose Liam again, or is he just not talkative?
Oh, I accidentally muted myself for the past 10 minutes or so.
Oh well, that'll do it.
I went to
It's
use
all
the
good.
bathroom and
We
then
apologize
muted
to the viewer
myself.
for the lack of content.
Yeah, sorry. That's our
Sorry
fault.
for the lack of Liam.
Oops.
my
Next
fault,
slide,
not
next
our
slide,
fault.
please. About these landing gear. Jesse Plemons' voice. Come to see about these landing gear. Who's been installing them?
Not landing
Look
his
at that.
gear.
He's got
Yeah.
2 tires. Okay, that is twice as many as
Oh,
you
wow.
This legally, this is a unicycle. So because of the aerodynamic characteristics of the U2. Like it's a lot of it. It's very aerodynamic. You have to kind of stall it onto the runway, which is a fun time.
Mhm.
And the way that you do this,
The stall speed is like 15 miles an hour, though.
boy.
Look at those
Yeah.
wings.
yeah, is you get a guy, like another U2 pilot. The CIA called them drivers so as not to disclose that it was a plane, which is a fun thing, and also like redneck as hell. You get a guy in a car that like chases it down the runway at like 120 miles an hour,
Jesus.
calling out the altitude. And like, because CIA and Air Force people are jocks, right? Like, if you name it, they did some real Top Gear shit with this. If you can name a car you think is cool, they have tried it with this. Like, apparently the most popular were like Pontiac GTOs, which is
The
like
original Honda NSX.
yeah, like just all type of weird shit, just absolutely like booming down whatever runway at like Groom Lake or whatever.
Australian sourced Pontiac GTOs?
Apparently, God
They
only
had
knows
that.
why the CIA went to Australia to get a Pontiac, but they did.
Oh, they went there to go steal them
They were
from
originally Holdens. They were, and then they were
Ah.
imported as the new Pontiac GTOs.
No shit.
They were
really?
they stole them off the line when they were about to be crushed because someone was hooning them.
That's making
They used
the
to
CIA
be the Holden
hoons.
Monaro.
Yeah, getting a challenge coin from the CIA's special hooning division.
Yes.
So,
Aerodynamically, these were really challenging to land, though. That is why the chase car exists.
and you may notice that this is a NASA chase car chasing a NASA U2 because it's like at a certain point I want to fly the cool plane.
I want the cool stuff, right? Why should they fucking get it?
Yeah, exactly.
I work for NASA. You're telling me I can't get the cool stuff? You owe us from that time we put like 4 of your guys on that satellite mission or whatever.
Exactly. We put your fancy camera up there. Now we want a U2. And give me one of those Soviet Concords too. And one of those other supersonic. Well, give me a whole bunch of stuff. Hold on.
In my head, this is going down in a like extremely like drunk situation. There's like 15 empties on the table each person, just like haggling for U2 access.
I just want a Caspian Sea Econoplane.
Oh, don't we all? Yeah.
Oh yeah. That definitely would be a great thing to have.
Mm.
All right, so the reason these were challenging to land, not to drag us too abruptly back on the topic, is the wing has a very narrow top to bottom. Right, it has a very low thickness. It has almost no camber as well. It's designed to go very fast through the air at those high altitudes, and because of that, it doesn't really have good low speed performance. It's not round enough for the air to like it very well. Also, the wing is quite narrow and long, will flex a bit, and with the air brakes out, you can see the very large flaps deployed that act like air brakes, and then you actually see the two. Could you point out those two little squares sticking out of the fuselage below the exhaust? It's kind of hard to tell. The tail shadow goes right in front of the left one.
Something like this.
Those two squares are fuselage air brakes. The U2 did not have wing air brakes. We will discuss why not in the next slide. When you're coming in on a plane like that, you can't really see the ground below you. When you are looking out through the nose, you are seeing quite far ahead on the runway, and your judgment of how high off the ground you are has been skewed. You haven't been near the ground for a while. Your monkey brain has already adjusted to that fact, and you will potentially get ground rush, or you will just simply level off too high because when you look out the window, it looks like you're on the ground because you're looking very far away. You're not looking down.
It also doesn't help that, like, typically you're flying these, like, to the Soviet Union and back or whatever. You've been flying for, like, I don't know, like fucking 30 hours. Like, presumably, like, giving yourself squeezy tubes of, like, instant cheese and CIA amphetamines. And the U-2 is, by all accounts, an exhausting plane to fly because it's always trying to kill you because air hates it.
How big was the crew?
It's one dude.
How did you
one
use
dude
the
on
bathroom?
military strength Adderall XR.
Yeah, one
Go in
dude,
the suit,
his
Roz.
like CIA speed, a silver dollar full of the most deadly poison they could give him. I mean, shit. Like,
What happens
And this
if you
thing is
have to
completely
poop?
empty. There is
You
no
go
fuel on
in
board.
the suit, Roz. God damn.
But it's poop.
Go in the suit, motherfucker.
What if there's a lot of poop?
you
Then you have more cleaning to do when you get done.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
What if you have to go to poop? You have to poop again.
then
It's 30 hours.
yes. Don't eat fiber
Don't eat,
before
don't
you
eat.
fly.
Right.
Weirdly, this is something that like early like American astronauts had to deal with, like the Mercury missions and stuff, like Redstone and stuff. When it was like suborbital, they were still going to be up there for a while, but it wasn't going to be like, you know, a day or whatever. And so they had to figure out, well, like, what if one of these guys has to shit in space? And until they developed the like technology that was plastic bag, what they came up with on the suborbital flights was, we feed you an extremely low residue diet and a shitload of, well, so to speak, of laxatives, and you just hold it. You know, pretty soon
Well,
you
and
will
then
not be in space.
And then you also take iron before you fly at high altitudes. The iron is thought to help with creating blood cells, because you will need more oxygen carrying capacity as you go to lower partial pressures of oxygen. And iron does a great job of stopping you up.
You could do some fascinating flight surgeon stuff on these guys.
Yeah.
But
I had a bowl of nails for breakfast
yeah,
Without any
eat,
milk.
without any milk. Yeah.
eat these iron filings. And again, you're trying to land this on, like, again, the like bicycle landing gear.
Right. Most airplanes, when you are trying to land them, they kind of want to go to the ground. They have a glide slope that is like less than infinity. A plane like this, its glide slope is pretty damn close to infinity. It will not want to go down on its own, so you kind of have to force it down, and it feels weird to fly a plane into the ground, thus the chaser calling out the altitude.
That
Go
makes
down.
sense.
Go down.
Ne-
Go down more.
Yeah.
Go down.
Keep
No,
I
going.
have a
more
story
down.
to tell before we get too far along in the story. Next slide, please. This is an L-23 Superblanic, also known as a TG-10B, flown by the United States Air Force Academy. This particular bird is Merlin 09. This is the exact bird I soloed my first glider flight in.
Nice.
And it's how I got my call sign Pogo.
Uh-oh.
Story inbound. So these particular gliders, their air brakes are in the root cord of the wing. They're closed right now, but if you look right next to the 09 on the image, and you see like a slight shadow that goes out toward the wingtip, that is one of the two air brakes. They are symmetric on the airframe. They are just barely inboard of the ailerons. That is correct. It is along there. There's a corresponding one on the far side. Those air brakes reduce the effective area of the wing, in addition to providing a lot of nice drag, which is nice when you're coming down on glide slope and you don't want to like go too quick, overspeed the airframe, tear your wings off, and then come down the hard way. This particular bird, the Let-23 Superblanic, or the Blanic as I might call it, the wings go forward and up. They have a positive vertical, I think it's a dihedral, but they have a negative sweep. Their sweep is forward.
It's moving
this
slightly
is-
forward. Yeah, you can sort of see that almost.
Aerodynamically quite interesting to fly when you're on tow on this plane and the tow rope isn't straight out the nose. It will be really stable for like about 5 degrees of mismatch on angle. Go beyond 5 degrees and suddenly it feels like it wants to flip you upside down. You really have to stay on top of it. But really fun to fly once you're off tow. Anyway, because of the kind of similar flight dynamics and landing gear configuration, this has one big mono wheel directly underneath the pilot seat. You can kind of see it in this. It looks like a shadow of the rock, but you've circled it. Good job.
I say, all right, that's a wheel.
It's really big, it's really bouncy, and it saved my spinal column. So we'll get to that. Coming in on final approach, ground rush is a thing. You level off a little bit too soon because like you want to level off before you hit the ground. Sometimes you level off a little bit too early. This was something I struggled with through pilot training. I am quite tall. I'm pushing 6 feet. So when I level off at my eye height, I'm about 4 feet, 5 feet off the ground when I'm sitting down in this plane, right? Like I'm not close to the ground when it feels like I'm looking at my eye height because I'm looking further out the cockpit. This one has a great view, but you're not like looking down out the side. You're looking out forward. You've got instruments in the way. It feels like you're closer to the ground than you are. So I held that altitude until as my airspeed was dropping, the air brakes were out, lots of drag, maintaining steady altitude, slowly increasing pitch. The wing loading increases when you have your air brakes out. The amount of effective wing area you have decreases, the wing loading goes up. And so you're kind of on this you could snap stall, right? So you go slow enough, and suddenly the roots of the wings, which have the highest camber of this wing, those wingtip root, those are the wing roots, the ones closest to the fuselage, will stall. Once that area is stalled, your effective area on your wing decreases exponentially as the rest of the wing just stalls in cascade. When the whole wing has stalled, you are no longer flying, right?
Right. You
So
are
I-
you
Thing
are
drops.
falling with style.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
I-
thing
I-
bounces onto runway.
I dropped about 4 or 5 feet straight down. Like I was flying along, and it looked like someone cut the strings holding the plane up. The video is hilarious. If the plane falls down, hits the wingtips, which are forward and up, dip down, almost brush the surface, and come back up like a springboard diver's arms, right?
Oh.
The plane bounces back up 4 or 5 feet. I slammed my air brakes shut as a reflex because my arm was on them, because you're supposed to close them the moment you touch down. I slammed the air brakes shut, continued to a beautiful landing with no air brakes, right? I've increased my effective wing area by doing that. I am no longer in snap stall range. My pitch hasn't really changed because I went straight back down and up over the center of gravity. Beautiful landing. And I pulled over onto the grass side of the runway with one wingtip down because it is a single wheel. It runs on a wingtip. There's skid plates on those wingtips. And I had about 2 minutes as they drove the airplane retrieval ATV out to me to come up with an excuse for why I didn't fail my solo. So I'm sitting there in this
just going there
cockpit.
like, well, any landing you walk away from or limp
Yeah,
away
yeah,
from.
Exactly. You can even use the glider again.
Early morning sunshine streaming through this scratched plexiglass canopy, and I'm sitting there going, okay, I got to be creative, and I got to be creative fast. They pop the canopy, I step out, and the instructor pilot says, Cadet Coots, could you tell me the purpose of that last maneuver? And, well, yes, I have to come up with something on the fly. I say, well, sir, you see, I've always had trouble with ground rush on landing. And so for my final approach on my solo flight, I wanted to make sure I got the landing perfectly. So before I touched down, I decided to do a manual altitude check. Needless to say, at the end of the class, of all of the graduate glider pilots, we watch all of the relevant moments from the training. Whether that was someone fucking up in a classroom, because everything's recorded, it's racked and stacked, it's horrible. But we watch all the video highlight reel, and people get their call signs. My call sign was Pogo, and it kind of stuck.
That's pretty good.
It's not the worst I've heard. Yeah.
You get to be a backup altimeter.
Yes. I'm just proud of coming up with manual altitude check on that short notice.
No, that's really good.
That is really good.
All right. That's why the U-2 has a chase vehicle, so that doesn't happen.
Yeah, so it doesn't happen in the $1 billion airplane.
Yeah, it would be very expensive.
Speaking of $1 billion airplanes.
Yes.
Ooh.
This is the epitome of high and fast.
Oh hell yeah, we've seen these.
Chills.
Whoosh.
The Lockheed
Fast.
A-12.
Vroom.
I think
Mm.
this actually might be an SR-71. It's really hard to tell them apart. They're only about
Yeah, because
4
they
feet difference in
publish
length.
all this information about them. It's really easy to find out, you know?
Right,
Yeah, yeah.
right.
I just looked at this and I was like, why did I put a line there? And then I realized, no, that's actually on the plane. I
It's
didn't.
just
The
there.
plane that John Madden's itself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently,
Also, I need
yeah.
to know what this film simulation is because, I need to take photos that look like this.
Mm,
It's high contrasty. The blues are muted. The red really pops.
mm.
Fuji Komi?
Elon Musk named one of his kids,
Oh,
the one
God.
with a weird name, in part after this plane, and it annoys me
X8E12 or whatever.
no end. Right. Come on, man.
Isn't he like? Wasn't he like? Well, it's spelled XAE12, but it's pronounced Kyle or something like that.
Yeah, whatever, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. What if the U2 is like 1 billion times cooler? From the twisted mind of Kelly Johnson.
Gorgeous plane. Aerodynamically perfect for what it did. Unfortunately, the problem with this plane is that it didn't like being on the ground.
Oh,
Mm.
Because the titanium skin of the aircraft would heat up at altitude and velocity, right? Skin friction
yes.
heating up. They had to design the skin panels and every part of the plane to be kind of too small to assemble a full plane out of when it was cold and on the ground. So the hydraulic system, the fuel system, everything leaked like a sieve when it was on the ground. And then when it took off, got up to temperature, got up to altitude, and everything like heated up and expanded and sealed up nicely, then it flew perfectly. But every minute it spent on the ground, you were dumping a gallon of fuel and a gallon of hydraulic fluid just everywhere.
Yup.
Mechanics hated this machine.
What a tasty snack for Liam.
Yeah, if you're wondering about how and why Area 51 came into the news from a bunch of like technicians suing the federal government for getting like 80 different kinds of cancer from hazardous materials.
Super cancer, right.
It doesn't necessarily have to be anything exotic so much as just like, yeah, I have to work in the like extremely climate controlled hangar where the plane like constantly baths fuel at me.
Well, it's not just barfing fuel, but like the hydraulic fluid that's designed to withstand the temperature changes and all of the things probably has additives that you do not want. That you won't find in the Bible, basically, or the Quran.
Yeah, and they
Or the
got
Torah.
It's like weeping various fluids, you know.
Right, all of which are known to the state of California to cause cancer.
Not known to the state of Nevada though, because that's federal land, and the state of Nevada looks the other way about that.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so same philosophy, right? And no one managed to shoot one of these down, at least not yet. Like, you know, this is due to, of course, the stagnation of Marxism-Leninism. The theoretical basis for building surface-to-air missiles has disappeared, and now we sort of like lumber on in the doomed world we've created.
Well, we sort of, it seems like the Islamists are trying to take up this mantle, but they haven't quite gotten it.
But yeah, so again, the deal is like we do like photography by going extremely high and extremely fast. Like, there is a story about the pilots of one of these getting a like airspeed check from like a civilian air traffic control in the US purely to flex, and it being like, the number that I read back isn't supposed to be this many digits, right? Like
I want to point out some aerodynamic features of this bird that will come up later as people try to make planes that aren't very good look cool. Because they were cool in this plane. If you look at the nose of the aircraft, you'll see that wide, how it's like really wide and flat, and how it like flattens out from the cylinder into this like scooped out blade edge. That toward the nose is usually called a chine. That chine generates a vortice, a very small tight vortice that sort of flows along the sides of the fuselage. There's no air that can come in to replace it without also entering through that vorticity by cresting over the sharp edge of the outside of the fuselage. And this creates two low pressure channels over the top of the fuselage and the center cord of the wing, which really helps with lift and does some really interesting things at lower angles of attack and makes it more flyable when you are doing things that it's not like that aren't straight line high and fast. This is used in reentry vehicles sometimes to help burn energy and provide lift and stability. You'll also see chines outside of the motors. On the outsides of those, there's a small chine that goes toward the wingtip before the wingtip happens. Same sort of feature where you have the air spilling over the outside, energizing the flow over the wingtip, helping with high angle of attack landing, because a plane designed to go this high and this fast doesn't like approaching slow and stationary. If you thought the U-2 was hard to land, this one was much, much, much harder. Of the 32 aircraft that were built, 32 SR-71s, I should clarify. I don't have numbers for the A-12, that being a spy-bird. Of the 32 SR-71s that were built, 12 were lost in accidents, although none were lost in enemy action. Those accidents were, upon reaching the ground, because this plane did not like to slow down. It wanted to go fast and go fast forever.
Well, most planes in accidents eventually reach the ground. Hold on a second. Someone's calling me. Why are they doing this?
Oh, God.
I'm back.
Was it your mom?
What? No, that was June trying to talk to me. And I said, no, I'm podcasting.
All right.
That's so
back
funny.
in.
Yes.
And we're back. So more than a third of the SR-71s produced crashed upon landing, or other reasons which weren't disclosed. And I'm not going to dig for that right now. Sorry, go ahead.
Tough to fly this. And again, you're doing all the same stuff of being like, I have been in this seat, which is covered in, presumably my own shit for like 30 hours in order to like get a direct sort of like film camera exposure of like a Soviet general's paws, you know?
The overlap of like aviation and camera nerd here is just perfect. That's all I'm going to say. Like, this is the dream job for like most of us.
I don't know that I want to do this one. I appreciate it. I think it's a sort of like beautiful piece of technology.
What if they let you wear the boots?
We'll get to the boots.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Next slide, please. It comes with the playset is expandable, right? It comes with an accessory. Yes. It's a D21. So we talk about drones a lot. Not as newer technology as people might think. This is something that had been experimented with, I think, chiefly in relation to China, right? Like, I could be wrong about this, but I think the deal with the D21 was like, the SR-71 is going to go off and do some shit, and it's going to decouple this like sort of unmanned vehicle that is going to do an overflight deep over like fucking Inner Mongolia or Lop Nur or whatever.
What does it? How, does it come back somehow? How does that work?
Well, they managed to crash one in China once, so, you know.
Okay.
I believe the mission profile was launch from high altitude, drone flies in, turns around, flies out. Takes a picture somewhere along the flight path. Probably not at the point of turnaround because it'd be banking pretty hard, and also you don't want to let people know what you're taking a picture of. It's
worse than that, actually. It's got a camera in there, obviously, right? It follows a like predetermined path. It's very easy to program that in. Well, relatively easy. And then it does the same thing as a spy satellite at the time, where it just dumps a film module out and then blows itself up.
Just poops it out.
Okay. That simplifies the landing problem. I thought they were going to put in a parachute and just
it experiences a crisis of confidence and explodes itself instantly. they tried to launch these off of B-52s as well. And I was entirely right. It was literally for Lop Nur, which is in Mongolia, I think. This didn't work very well.
I had to take some pictures of some horses.
But I believe the last launch of this killed a person.
Oh boy!
Really?
Yeah, so you see it's being flown by an M21. The Air Force likes renaming birds when they start, like, they put on like a little tab and they name it something else. This is a repurposed SR-71 with, as you can see below the drone, there's a center tail on this SR-71 that doesn't exist on the regular one that's supporting the drone. And that is what makes this an M21, or the mothership for the D21, or the drone 21. The fourth launch, I'm reading my notes here. The fourth launch ended in disaster. The D21 engine didn't start. And so upon separation, rather than flying forward and away, it flipped sideways and took out one of the the rudders. And that destroyed both aircraft. The crew ejected and landed. The pilot survived, but the launch control officer didn't make it, drowned apparently.
A couple of other D21 stories I discovered. The first one that they tried didn't turn around successfully, and so just like flew over China into the Soviet Union. Crashed there, where it was immediately reverse engineered by the Soviets.
Hand them our technology, especially the engines, which were cutting edge at the time.
Mm-hmm.
My God, the Americans have invented a plane that can blow itself up.
The third one
I think
is
the biggest thing we were worried about was actually the turbine technology, because I think that we were investigating very complex crystalline structures for turbine blades. Very high temperature, very high pressure, very high force applications. So those were the space age materials that were the most dangerous for the Russians at the time to have.
The third D21, but before they canceled the program because like it didn't work very well. The third one flew over Lop Nur, turned back, ejected the film, self-destructed. The film parachute fails to open, so the film canister like misses the mid-air thing where the plane catches it in mid-air. Goes straight into the ocean. The destroyer that's meant to then come and fish it out of the ocean rams it by accident and sinks it. Just beautiful work all around.
It's great.
It's like
Just
we
imagine.
spent like
That's like the
Brilliant,
opposite of the Swiss
right.
cheese model of failure. It's kind of like you manage to fuck up along every path.
Jesus.
Well, how you
this
think it
slice of
goes?
cheese,
Bases.
mostly holes.
The Soviets discover the crashed drone. They're like, Yevgeny, I have discovered space age turbine blade material. Can you make this? Yeah.
Next slide, please.
There
God,
is
God, these
no
are cool
SR-91
pictures.
Aurora. That does not exist. It is a plane that... So here's the thing. We created hypersonic programs. We had the X-15, the X-43. We proved that we could sustain Mach 9.6 plus flight at roughly 33 kilometers of altitude and 3 kilometers a second. We had sustained level flight. And then we just decided not to do anything with that. Please believe me. I don't want to...
Degrowth. It's degrowth.
Yeah,
Is what's happening.
We're definitely only using that entire heritage of technology to make Wave Rider missiles.
Yeah, because famously, the Air Force and the CIA got bored of doing jock shit. They never want to do this again. Like,
Yeah.
there's no desire in either of those organizations to be like, I'm a space cowboy.
As we learned from the aircraft
Oh,
Dark
yeah.
Star from Top Gun Maverick, these systems don't work, and the United States military would never be interested in pursuing them as a technology source.
Mhm.
I just want to spend less time on the airplane, man.
This shit
we-
isn't trickling down for
Yeah,
real.
It's not,
Like,
yeah,
it's,
exactly. It's
yeah.
like
It's
We
too
had our chance with
secret.
the
We gotta-
Concorde, and all of us were born too late.
Yeah,
it's-
exactly.
it's-
Can we just get a hypersonic airliner, please?
Yeah, this is the thing. Like, I don't want to get an HST like a high speed train. I want to get an HST like a hypersonic transport. You know?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
No. I want the high-speed train, and I want to cross the oceans at a nice leisurely pace on my Zeppelin.
Oh, okay.
Like, I want to like sit in aluminum-chaired luxury across the Atlantic.
I
No-
want to
no
be in
smoking.
New York City in 45 minutes, and I don't care what it does to my internal organs.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it says
so
there should not be no cruise speed. It's only accelerating and decelerating.
That's right. But yeah, no. I guess in 70 years we will find out that you're exactly right. None of this ever happened, and yeah, we were proven right once again. Putting down a
they
marker
flew
now.
like twice and proved that it was possible, and then suddenly the program was just, they just stopped it. It wasn't promising enough.
I
yeah.
think it's cool how like we have a bunch of like really bleeding edge stuff in like sort of aerodynamics, and nothing ever happened about it except for that one time when maybe there were aliens. I mean, aliens who were focused entirely on the sort of like Pacific coast of America, places where there would be no reason for anyone in any country to be doing any kind of interesting.
Yeah,
sort
definitely
of-
not well within reach of Edwards Air Force Base and the large dry lake bed with the
Nope.
big
Mhm.
compass rose that you should look at
Mhm.
on Google Maps.
Mhm.
Nope.
The
Nope.
aliens took one look at the real estate prices there, and they're like, "Nah."
Fuck
Yeah, we're not
that.
going to bother landing there. We've been landed in Roswell. Nice open space. Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Good trees.
I guess we'll all find out in due time. Next
Roswell's
slide, please.
too hot.
Oh, yeah,
Roswell's that ends well, etc., etc. This is the most space cowboy shit I want to mention about this. We talked about
Actual
the boots.
hecking spurs.
Yeah. So weirdly, they got the ejection seat out of a starfighter. But like that requires that you restrain yourself into it so that you don't break both your legs when you eject.
Oh.
And the way
I
that
need to
you
have
do
my
that.
legs pulled off at the knee when I launch out of my
Yeah,
airplane that's burning.
and the mainmast carried off both my legs. The way that you don't do that is that you get these cool spurs that lock into the seat. And these are also a thing on U2's SR-71s, and definitely not anything else.
Those seem incredibly uncomfortable. If I'm pushing really hard on like my rudder pedals, and like my leg muscles are fully engaged, and then the wires just yank my feet off of the pedals and into the seat, I'm gonna have such bad tearing. I won't be able to do leg day for weeks.
And you're doing this for, again, like 30 hours.
Right. Ugh.
You really need the amphetamines for this. I also want to know...
And you're covered in poop.
Yeah, you are smeared like a bagel up there.
I mean, you had to wear like functionally a spacesuit to like fly these things because you're almost in space, right?
They were
Like
pressure suits, I believe.
yeah, this is like normal, right? Except for the fact that for some reason, fashion style, when they were doing the SR-71 boots, they were like, I need this in white leather.
Mm.
Go to the moon on this shit, and I really really appreciate that. You know, you don't get
So,
you get a lot
they
of
couldn't-
flair
they couldn't-
in this stuff.
They couldn't fly them after Labor Day.
I don't know why they're white, but I have a theory.
Mm.
My theory is that if you were in a cockpit of a plane that leaks like a sieve and like leaks lots of important fluids, you might want to be able to identify what has fallen on your shoes.
Ah,
That
interesting.
makes sense.
Yeah, I love the zips on them as well. Like it's very like it's obviously no chance of getting an original pair of SR-71 boots, not least because they're all probably like in a burn pit in Groom Lake, having been impregnated with
Yeah.
every chemical under the sun.
All of them,
But like,
every single one.
if someone who makes boots wants to replicate this, I am willing to pay upwards of an embarrassingly large number of dollars for a pair of these.
Quote me a price too. Size 10, please.
Next slide, please. We stopped doing
Okay.
this. We definitely stopped doing
So
this.
we're-
We definitely stopped trying to go high and trying to go fast. Please don't put me in federal prison. We gave up on the easier, less dangerous options. We tried options 1 through 4. We looked at option number 5 and said, yeah, we can see a pattern here. And so we decided to try stealth. We tried to be sneaky. We figured we have computers now. We can fly planes the air doesn't like. Having computers doesn't necessarily mean that you have theory or practical knowledge. We will find out about that shortly.
We had
at
we
least-
had ChatGPT design us an airplane.
Oh, no.
Please don't.
I
like
guarantee
living.
you there is someone with a serious clearance right now, probably multiple people, teams of people trying to use like generative AI to come up with like a shape of a plane.
Somebody who failed upward to the point that they don't know what they're doing, saying, I can probably use ChatGPT to fill out these reports.
Yeah,
I'm
imagine
really
a-
excited for that future that we've created for ourselves, where artistic endeavors are the realm of machines and drudgery is the realm of humans.
You
That's
imagine
not exactly the
if
opposite of how it should be.
a guy who outranks you is a prompt engineer.
Oh,
Ugh,
God.
Jesus.
why are you
Yeah,
like this?
at that point, I would do the U2 pilot thing. I'd find a nice special coin.
I think at that point you're gonna wind up in a falling down type situation.
Okay, so early stealth was low and slow because of physics and material science reasons. Early stealth relied on facets and flat planes, which aren't very aerodynamic. And that means that you don't produce a lot of lift, you produce a lot of drag, you just have a lot of problems with the basic act of flying before you start talking about doing anything other than trying to get a lump of rock off of the ground. We've taught rocks to see, we've taught rocks to fly now, we've now taught rocks to think, and all of them have been mistakes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So early stealth was low and slow. Later stealth never actually became a primary concept as a aircraft design metric. We came very close to that with the YF-23, but by the time that the YF-23 rolled around, and we had the technology to make planes that were both flew well and were stealthy, we no longer had any need for them to actually be stealthy. They just needed to have like low observability for procurement reasons and look cool for, again, procurement reasons. Most of these vehicles that we're going to talk about next are US military development, and that is simply because we spend more money on ways to kill people than the rest of the world combined. Next slide, please.
Oh, and she's got the charts to prove it.
I've got the
Yes.
charts to prove it. These are I went down through Israel because Israel spends a lot of money on defense relative to its population size, but I wanted to just give a sense of scale here.
Jesus
The United
Christ.
States population, roughly 300 to 400 million people, outspends China by a factor of 3. China has something like way, way, way more people than we do. We outspend Russia, we outspend India. India has the world's highest population of any individual nation, and it has less than a tenth of our defense spending. It is insane how much money we spend on our aerospace and defense industry sectors. And
You see Saudi
Also-
Arabia on there, which is sort of heavily biased because most of that money is going to like Gucci white leather belts.
Yes.
there's an asterisk there. I didn't look into the data too tightly. That number does surprise me, but like also they have literally a country where they just pull money out of the ground and then kill us all with it.
Mhm.
Because the inevitable entropy will get us all.
Hey, and we're on there too, punching above our weight.
Well done.
You are. You're doing so
Germany
good.
should not be allowed to be here.
No, no.
Yeah.
Actually, Japan too.
Japan. Well, Japan still should get one free hit after what we did to them.
Okay, yeah. I'll give the Italians a pass because I like them.
Yeah.
What are they going to do? Drop Parmesan on me?
Oh, that'd be great. That'd be fantastic.
One
Just
of
like a
their
big
beautifully
wheel.
designed missiles that doesn't work.
Yeah,
Mm.
big wheel of Parmigiano delivered
Oh, no,
directly
don't
to
hurt
you.
me, Italy.
Australia's allowed to spend money. They mostly just buy US stuff and then complain about how we don't let them repair it.
Australia is for defense against the wildlife there, I
Mm,
assume.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Why we're
I've
giving them
heard
those
it's
nuclear
posturing about
submarines.
the nearby oceans to the north.
Mm. No,
Poland,
no,
I
this-
don't know what they do with it, but
yeah,
sure,
Oh,
do
I'll
you?
tell you what Poland do with it.
Submarines.
Oh,
What
yeah.
Poland do with it are build
Screen
the like
door submarines.
largest armored formations Western Europe has ever seen, and then hover like all 5 fingers of one hand over the like Article 11 button.
Not
Like
touching can't get mad. Not touching can't get mad.
genuinely, like I think
And
a
then
lot.
Israel uses their
Mm.
spending for genocide. We'll get into that.
Mhm, absolutely.
Next slide,
Yes.
please.
Yeah, so I got to introduce you to a guy, and
Ooh.
this is Pyotr Ufimtsev. This is he's a physicist, and he develops PTD, the physical theory of diffraction, which is basically right. This is the guy who understands better than anybody else in the world at the time that he's doing it, which is the 60s, how radar waves act when they hit a surface, right? Because
So he's got quite a few decorations for it.
Just a
it
couple.
seems.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what happens is that they bounce back, but they don't only bounce back; they scatter a bit, right? And this has implications. The implications he was looking at the time were like how to make something very visible to radar, which is very useful if you want to know where it is. But obviously, there is a sort of a counterfactual here, right? There's a kind of a myth that the Soviets don't know that this research is important when he's doing it. Which again you can refute by the number of medals he's wearing, right? But like
Yes, there's quite a few.
he's far enough ahead of his time that like it kind of doesn't matter to them, to the point that they don't stop it being published, right? In like openly. Which means he's publishing this stuff. No one in the Soviet Union like really knows what to do with it. But Lockheed is reading it, and Boeing is reading it, and Northrop Grumman is reading it. And DARPA is reading it. And so this theory is like very, very useful for thinking about like, well, if I want to design something that has a small radar cross section, if I want to like design something that looks smaller than it is, or disguise like, mass, how do I do that? How do I shape that? And the sort of history of stealth technology is like doing some very complicated maths about like shaping stuff, and then particularly like curving stuff. Continuous curvature is another thing we'll get into. This guy, by the way, retired to the US, would you believe? So it's kind of like, like communist Werner von Braun, not to make an ideological comparison, but what I mean is there's always work for guys like this.
Right.
Oh yeah, you just it's like, all right, well, we're all on the same side now, and this is more money in the US.
So now we've talked about the cool guy on the left. Let's talk about some really boring stuff. Well, not really.
Oh boy.
We are going to be talking about radar, and it's important, I think, in this context to understand the bands that we're talking about. We're primarily looking at S-band through X-band. That is 2.2 gigahertz to roughly 10 gigahertz in our bandwidth of frequencies for aircraft radar that we're going to be defending against. This will come into context when we're talking about radar absorbent materials. Next slide, please.
Ooh, nice graphics.
Thank you. I made this model myself. So this is MATLAB 2024A. I made a custom wave propagation, just a 2D wave propagation simulation. I'm very proud of how well it handles diagonals. I used all 8 surrounding cells rather than just the 4 cardinal ones, as in most tutorials. I wanted to do better, so I did. Again, my background is in this kind of thing, computational mathematics. So doing this was really fun, and my girlfriend was looking at me like I was crazy because we were watching Emma on the couch, and I have my computer open and I'm typing away in MATLAB.
Most of my MATLAB experiencers are just screaming at it, just like fucking like, this is the worst program I've ever used, except the other
MATLAB's
thing.
error messages are rarely helpful.
Yeah.
One thing I do want to point out before we start talking about what exactly we're looking at is if you look at the vertical bars on the right, you'll notice that the same amount of energy is missing from each of those pulses.
Brat Summer is getting really
Right.
weird.
So that means that the object has taken out that energy and has either redirected it or absorbed it. We're trying to make it not go back to the viewer to the left-hand side of the screen. So what we see here is a radar pulse. Now, this pulse is not just a single sinusoidal wavelet. I used 2 stacked sinusoids for this demonstration because when you are using a radar system, you probably don't want to get distracted by lightning strikes and any other kind of EM interference that's just a single wave or wavelength. You want to have like a filterable pulse that you can look at a Fourier transform of your signal that you're receiving and know that it was your radar station that emitted it and when the reflection came back in. So you want to have a very distinct wave that you emit and then receive and then know what you saw. If I'm talking out of my ass, that's great. If I'm not, then pretend like I am. So the first object is round, and the air likes round things, but round things are easy to see. This is what I mean when I say that. You can see that the reflection reaching the left-hand side of the screen from the round object is very, very bright, very well-defined, and very visible. This would be considered a very strong radar return. That wave is basically exactly what you sent out, except it's vertically reversed, and it is just going to read so loud and clear. It's a beautiful reflection, but that's not what we want. We want to be invisible, not to be visible. The second one, this is the shapy shapes. So this one is simply a square. It has the same height, so relative to the wave, it has the same cross-section. It reflects way less in the direction of the wave hitting it, but because even though there's like nothing pointing back, we still get that big arc of return because diffraction is a thing, and if you're not absorbing, it's diffracting. You still get some diffraction even with absorption, but you get much less. And so what you have is you have something bouncing off of that tip and then creating that reflection out to the side, and the diffraction from that reflection makes that front arc. It's actually coming from both sides and meeting in the middle. It's not actually coming off of the front of the object, it's coming off the side and swinging forward. The physics of that are quite interesting. You'll see a second set of that coming from the back surface. In fact, if you look in closely, you'll see these smaller arcs that are buried inside the big arc of the first diamond shape. Lastly, I coded the diamond shape in radar absorbent material. And for the cases of this simulation, I simply had it absorb the wave. I would predict what the value would be and pretend like the wave was passing into the material.
Just eats your radar emission. Like
Basically, yes. It hits. It
where is my radar wave? Like entirely full of radar waves. No idea.
Chomp.
Yeah.
Okay. So shapes help, and they make things harder to see. In fact, the F-104 Starfighter, if I recall correctly, had a radar reflector in the nose gear assemblage, so that when it was on final approach, the air traffic control could see it because the air traffic control radar wasn't designed for like military aircraft detection. So it would send out a radar pulse, and that would just bounce off of all the sharp front edges of the F-104, and nothing would come back to the emitting station. And they'd go, "We can't see your airplane upon approach." And so to do that, they put like a retroreflector on the nose wheel gear. So it was hidden when it was flying, and then when it dropped down the nose gear, suddenly you had a radar return from directly in front of you, and the air traffic control didn't panic.
Nice.
So shapes are great, but without radar absorbent material, no amount of stealth can actually happen. It will be much less observable, but it can't be not observable because of physics. The early versions of radar absorbent material were iron ball paint. This type of RAM,
iron. What can't it do? Make you invisible to radar. Make you stop shitting.
Very useful material.
Yeah. Well, the good news is you actually save weight if you have been shitting your pants nonstop for 30 hours in the Justin Rosniak designed flight suit.
I wanted a separate toilet.
No, that adds weight, buddy. Sorry.
I mean, given that you're not going to have the space to kind of get out of a seat, I think the thing is you just make the seat a toilet.
Right.
You're just on
That's
the
kind of
toilet
what
like
I'm thinking
constantly.
too, right? Like, oh god, a seat without a bottom for 30 hours? No, thank you.
It probably would not be good.
I don't like that
It's
at
just
all.
like my legs going numb.
I don't know that I ever need to see Roz in a fighter plane. I've seen Roz in a normal plane, and he's pretty fucking miserable.
I'm more of a train guy.
Yeah, are you, bud?
Yeah. Those usually have bathrooms.
Yeah, they usually do. With
Right.
seats even.
Welcome back, Ed Radar of Material. So we need to stop those reflections. To do that, we have to absorb the energy in the surface of the aircraft or boat without it returning to the source. Early versions, iron ball paint, small spheres, hollow spheres of iron would be embedded in the
delicious.
paint and sprayed on. That's why the F-117 was painted black. It wasn't because we liked the color black, it's because that's the color of iron ball paint. We'll come back to iron ball paint when we start talking about carbon nanotubes, but that's out from a bit. To my knowledge, the next form of stealth coatings that was proposed were something called Jalman absorbers. I don't think they were ever used. They were just like two plates separated, and they would just act as an absorbing antenna. That was perfected with the split ring resonator, which to my knowledge is the most recent, and most stealth aircraft today use split ring absorbers. What they are basically antennas. They're like basically what it says is a split ring. So you nest two or more rings together in kind of a nested, kind of Russian nesting doll kind of way, and then you just split the rings on alternating sides as you go outward. And what this does is this creates a series of resonating absorbers that can absorb wide bands and different sorts of bands, and you can tune them very specifically. They don't have to be exact. Go ahead.
We got way too good at shapes.
Yeah, we're bending the laws.
Yeah, these shapes are pretty fun shapes. They are usually lithographed onto a surface, because that's how you would make them. You'd spray down a dielectric, you'd spray down your conductor, you'd then etch your conductor, and then you have your set of rings. And then you would paint over that so people can't see what rings you're using with a camera, so that you don't get like them tuning their radio to the places you're not absorbing. They are great. You can be isolated pretty easily, so you can adjust the tuning capacity by just leaving a ring unsplit. Turns that into like an isolating ring, so that you don't get that resonance happening.
We got programmable like paint patterns or like etching
That's
patterns.
wild.
Yeah, programmable materials is pretty cool. So like if you imagine a set of nested hexagonal patterns across, say, a plate on an aircraft as a panel, that will explain why when the F-22 gets a paint scratch, you have to replace the whole panel. You can't just spray a little bit more gray over the top of it. If you scratch that deep enough to cut the rings, you break the stealth for that portion of the panel, and you go from having a stealthy surface to a reflective surface.
This is borderline magic runes shit to me.
It is pretty cool because if you make the right shape out of the right materials, it does magical things. It feels like glyph wards, if you will. For scale, for how big these rings are, if you were to look at a ring that was a centimeter across or 10 millimeters, and you were to make two nested rings, each of them 1 millimeter wide and separated by 1 millimeter, you would create a absorber that would absorb microwave radiation, like the one from your microwave, 2.4 gigahertz. So like at the lower end of the band, that is the biggest.
Approaches your microwave with a riot shield I have covered in these. The microwave nullifier.
Can't see you.
Your chicken will become totally raw.
Anyway, so that's like the biggest size that they'll be. So all of the ones that are etched onto aircraft surfaces will be smaller than that. When we looked at the bands on the previous slide, we talked about how it's 2 gigahertz to 10 gigahertz. Well, the longer wavelength or largest size of absorber would be about a centimeter. Cool.
You have to be so good at engineering to make this.
The last technology that is used primarily for grifting defense contracts is carbon nanotubes. They have always been 10 years away. They always will be 10 years away. There is no possibility of making them not 10 years away. And so there will be variations of carbon nanotubes or very high carbon count buckyballs. Like imagine the iron ball paint spheres, except made out of carbon this time, graphene layers. These will be sold to the US government's Defense Procurement Agency as a technology used to spend X number of millions developing over the next 10 years. And whoever manages that grift gets 10 years of easy pay. Someday, I will write up a paper on it. There will always be far away the state-of-the-art split ring resonators. at least the civilian-aware state-of-the-art split ring resonators. There's no real reason to go higher than that unless you want more maintainability. If you want something sprayable, then you might have to go somewhere else. But honestly, at the cost of those aircraft, having a couple of spare panels is not a huge deal. Taking the panel off and resurfacing it is fine when they never see combat anyway.
Yeah, that's the whole point of stealth.
So,
Correct. They do see combat in certain cases, but it's never like fair.
Sure.
It's dropping bombs on people who have like
Fuel.
don't even have wooden sticks. They've already burned it for fuel.
Mm.
Next slide, please. Why did I use a diamond as an example of a non-aerodynamic shape that is used for stealth?
Oh, she's beautiful.
Right? This right here
oh
is
wow.
Have Blue.
Oh
Have
yeah.
Blue was the technology demonstrator that eventually became the F-117. You'll notice some differences when we get
No,
to
they
the
took the
F-117.
fucking camouflage off her.
They took the camouflage off.
Should've
This one,
Returned with a V.
Well,
Yes, yeah.
Because you can't
these
see
might
it.
have flown without ever having been coated in iron ball paint. I believe these were aerodynamic investigators, and we knew that the paint would work because we can test the paint on a plate of metal that doesn't have to be on an airplane. And we wanted to be able to see these things on radar so we could see how they were flying when we didn't have active communications with them. Also, breaking up the outline of the faceted plane made it much harder for spy satellites to determine what we were doing.
It's like one of the pre-launch car models that just has the insanely weird wrap on it to stop you from copying the shape of it, you know?
Yeah, this is razzle dazzle camouflage for planes. You're welcome. So the Have Blue did not fly well. You can see some changes that they made to the F-117 is that they turned the tails from going inward to going outward. Originally, the tails pointed inward like they do on Have Blue because that avoided creating a concave angle. A concave angle can act as a retroreflector pretty easily from that angle, so you want to avoid those when possible.
You're just
with radar
trapping waves that just bounce around inside them, you know?
Yeah, the waves will bounce 1 or 2 times and come straight back at the observer. We don't want that. We tried to avoid it, but having the tails go inward and be blanked by the fuselage at high angles of attack makes landings very difficult. Thus, the first one that was ever made crashed in 1978 on landing. It came down, it lost some stability, bounced really hard, they flew it up, the landing gears were damaged, and so they ejected. Rather than try to land with damaged landing gear, because we didn't have 0-0 ejection seats at that time. The second plane was lost in 79. A hydraulic fuel leak created a lack of hydraulic pressure. These were fly-by-wire aircraft. They were not stable to fly. They required the computer constantly making adjustments of control surfaces in order to stay in the air. When that hydraulic leak happened, they lost control authority and the plane became unstable. The pilot ejected safely and the aircraft was destroyed. And that was both of them. This is what happens when you fly a plane the air doesn't like.
Tested to destruction.
I think someone put in a note here at the bottom. Do they want to read it?
Yeah, this is something that more applies to the F-117, but I really like it. This is one of Lockheed's leads on this, talking to the New York Times after it was declassified, said that one of the things that they were worried about was harmonic resonances, but also not just in terms of radar, but also sound. And he describes the exhaust, and he says, we wanted to avoid turning the F-117A into a harmonica. Stealthy airplanes are supposed to be quiet as well as invisible. And I just really love the idea of this thing that you cannot pick up on radar, but it sounds like
so
mournful harmonica screams past you.
Did we just invent inventors? Okay, next slide, please.
I think all body types can be beautiful.
Oh wow!
This is Tacit Blue. I often compare myself to Tacit Blue because I try to be stealth at work. I have to travel to Florida and Texas and Alabama and shit. I don't want to, but it's part of my job. So I fly stealth, and this plane understands me, and I understand her. This is a plane that understands 1960s women dysphoria. This is a plane that knows how to dress for her body type. This plane has a dramatic contralto singing voice.
Thank you for that. I think most of those are for me.
Those are all for you. Yes. This is Tacit Blue. This was a technology demonstrator of not only some stealth ideas. You can actually see a lot of the design elements that end up in the B2 Spirit. Look specifically at the cockpit, the front of the cockpit, and sort of the start of the fuselage area, as well as the wing shape. These are all things that came into play in the B2 Spirit. The primary purpose of this plane was the large flat sides of it. Those were used to test out early phased array low observable radars. So you wouldn't necessarily think that emitting radar from a plane intended to be radar invisible would be a good idea. It'd be like putting a spotlight on top of something that's painted black, right? It wouldn't really be effective. So they were looking into ways of having an aircraft that could emit radar without those radar emissions and detections being seen by other actors, right? Do you want to hide the signals as lightning strikes far away? Do you want to hide the signals by making them very short and very bursty? Do you want to hide them by having them spread spectrum? Like, how do you want to examine being able to send out sensor emissions and receive them without being observed yourself doing that? How do you see without being seen? That was a very interesting design, and there's not a whole lot of information about what they did, which I assume means that it was pretty successful at what it did.
Hmm.
If it had failed, they'd be talking about it and trying to convince other people to try picking up that technology. If they did a really good job with it, which I think they did, they would not talk to you about what worked. Both examples survived, to my knowledge, or was it one example? One example survived, and it has been sitting in Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in the National Museum of the United States Air Force for a while, for at least a few dozen years.
Oh.
It's a gorgeous plane. If you have a chance to go see it, please see it and take pictures for me. I might never get to Ohio.
Let's hope not.
It's a gorgeous bird, and it's one of the few planes that the air liked. It survived 250 flight hours.
Wow.
Yep. It was declassified in 96 and then in a museum about 20 years later.
Just like in 1996 being like, check out the shit we got up to.
Look at this.
Do you like it?
Yeah. Look at it.
It kind of looks like a beluga whale.
It does. It does. That Airbus plane that flies around parts for other Airbus planes.
Yeah.
All right, next slide, please.
They made it worse. They
took
Roz, do you need coffee, buddy?
Maybe in a second.
Okay.
They took Have Blue and they made it black. They painted it black and they made it edgy.
Oh, I've heard that Rolling Stones song.
I was gonna do. I saw a camo plane and I want to paint it black.
Okay, so this is the F-117A Nighthawk. It is a not actually retired American single-seat subsonic twin-engine stealth aircraft.
Just don't know how to quit them. Same with the U-2s, you know? Like,
as with the history of governments just, ending promising programs, they stopped flying the F-117 nominally in, like, the 90s. And then somehow in September of 2021, when two F-117s landed in Fresno, one of them was observed not to be fitted with radar reflectors.
Mysterious, spooky.
And then the United States Air Force published photographs of that plane without the radar reflectors on somewhere, I don't remember where, which was the first formal acknowledgement that the aircraft continued to fly after its official retirement, saying, hey, we know we told you about this cool stealth plane. We stopped flying it. Trust us. Don't look for it. It's hard to find.
And it kind
don't
of
bother
works.
putting in the effort because it's not flying anymore.
This kind of worked.
So this aircraft, I love this thing as a child. Like, I love that the shapes of it. I knew it didn't fly well. I wanted to fly it anyway. I had a little model of it. The feeling of those facets under your fingers, so good. Very, very beautiful plane to touch.
It's God's stim toy, you know?
Don't try to touch them in real life. It's lethal to do so. You will die of bleeding out from gunshot wounds. Yeah.
Oh.
Good to know.
Yes.
And then shortly afterwards from like all the cancer.
Probably. I don't think these ones, like, they didn't have any exotic fluids in them because they weren't doing exotic flight regimes. I think the iron ball paint at this point has outgassed enough that you're not going to die from breathing. It's outgassing.
So that's how you'd probably be fine.
You'd probably be fine. Yeah, just don't go near them. They're usually very considered secret. And they usually have bombs on them. So the F-117 was a very successful aircraft for its stated mission goals. It was when stealth was a primary design concept. It didn't fly fast, it didn't fly very well, but what it did do is it would carry like a single bomb, maybe two, deep into enemy territory without being seen, and could drop a small volume of munitions on a very precise location, which we never really needed to do.
Yeah,
we
just in
used,
case you
we
want to
used
like.
it in the Gulf
Sure.
War, but we could have beaten the Gulf War with way less technology than we used. We just we had it
Yeah,
from
it's just flexing, you know.
yeah,
but
we
like,
had it from developing against the Russians, and then we just was like, well, we have to
what this
line
is
around.
built for is to like say you are like, you know, you're in the Red Army, you're implementing 7 days to the Rhine or whatever, you're gonna like drive to Antwerp. This is all well and good. This thing is meant to like come into your airspace, find the like, you know, headquarters of the fucking 40th Root Army or whatever, and drop something directly down its urethra.
Yeah, we had developed the Smashnator 8000 or whatever from the
Smashnator.
Hydraulic Press Channel, and we saw a problem that was a nail, and we said, why not?
drops one enormous hammer directly onto the command post.
Right. It's over-engineered to what we used it for. It wasn't. I talk about how like it could do with relative precision with a single bomb, and with a single bomb, it was relatively precise. That said, a single bomb isn't very big. It's not a very effective weapon, and I'm going to quote Wikipedia here. Early claims of the F-117's effectiveness were found to be overstated. They failed to hit 40% of their assigned air defense targets. So the mission goals during the Gulf War for this airframe were to fly in, be undetectable by radar, take out the radar sites so the more radar visible conventional aircraft could go in and do the heavy lifting of killing human beings in a conflict that was pointless anyway.
Makes sense.
So, good plane. Yay. Not unlamowable, though.
Not unlamowable. This is an F-117 that did in fact get lamowed and inspire the movie Behind Enemy Lines, because the Serbs shot it down during the like NATO bombing of Yugoslavia. You sometimes see this get cited as an example of like anti-imperialism. You very much do not have to hand it to
You
the
don't have to
Serbs
hand it
here.
to the Serbs. I was going to say.
they,
Yeah.
they were they were mid-genocide at the point of doing this.
Yes.
But so yeah, a couple of things going on here. Human intelligence, complacency, and a great case of like sort of one mid-level officer making his own luck, and of course Marxism, Leninism making you very good at developing surface-to-air missiles.
Yes.
This thing got lamowed by an SA-3 battery, and part of the reason why it did is because they were flying very predictable routes, and because the Serbs had human intelligence. They had spies watching the airfields in Italy where these were taking off from. They knew that they were going to be sort of like broadly unescorted. It was horrible weather. They hit it on the way coming back, and also just like just good officering, like being very, very good at like moving your like surface-to-air missile battery in very quick time. Like being very disciplined with the time that you have your radar on, so that seed doesn't like blow you up, and just also the fact that it's more detectable on radar if you have the like bomb bay open, which it did at the time,
Sure.
and then got rewarded by being exploded. The guy didn't die as well. Like the pilot's still like besties with the guy who commanded the battery who shot him down, which is a fun story.
Huh?
Just like, you know, it's all good now, you know. So sorry about the Albanians or whatever. Which okay, sure. I just I think the lesson from this is that like, yeah, it's all very well like having the thing, but it's you're using it kind of outside its design parameters, and then you're using it complacently. Then someone is going to take advantage of it, and all it takes is
yeah, it's just someone's gonna like say, well, it's not actually invisible, and shoot it down.
Yeah, and it's a sort of stirring in its own way, sort of like endorsement of the role of like, you know, sort of battery commander or whatever, that like all it takes is like one person and one team to be like switched on more than anyone expects, and you can really like, you know, down the sort of like sort of stealth aircraft, which is, you know, you credit where it's due to the Genocidaires. That was impressive.
Yeah.
I said I wasn't going to give them credit. I ended up having to give them credit.
Oh, yeah, you brought up
You
giving
can
them
give
credit.
you can
yeah.
give the SAM site commander credit. He wasn't actively, murdering people. I
Yeah.
hope not him individually.
No, not so
Yeah.
much. I mean, difficult to do a genocide directly yourself with a surface-to-air missile, but
I feel like
Someone's
there's
gonna
one
try.
guy doing the genocide.
yeah,
Just
yeah.
a one-man genocide.
God.
This
But-
did
Personally
pop the U.S. Air
slaughtered.
Force's bubble about stealth technology, though. This particular event was the first time a stealth aircraft had been shot down by the very thing it was designed to evade. They worried that they didn't know how it was shot down or detected. That wasn't instantly available.
They had
Started
another-
to worry that there was something about the design of the aircraft that was flawed.
Well, I mean, this being America, we got to spend another like $100 billion on finding out.
But we're sure
But-
gonna
No,
not.
far more than 100 billion. Just one of the planes coming up in part 2, dear listener, please return, is a $200 billion defense project.
So,
Oh,
Serbia
yes.
is going to find out why the US doesn't have free healthcare. Given that it's now coming up to like 2.5 hours, I think we're going to try something unprecedented, which is breaking it up into multiple episodes. So, Alea, thank you so much.
So
No
preview of future formats for our listeners as doing
Yes.
these very
I mean-
very we in our aged states doing these very very long podcasts is getting difficult.
Speak for yourself. It's 1:46 in the morning, and I'm fine. Skill
Justin,
issue.
Liam, I am sorry for making it so long.
Oh, that's
To your
okay.
viewer, you are welcome for the additional content. They gave me like a week to help assemble these slides, and I think I spent more than I should have off my break time just
It's-
assembling and adding things in.
Yeah, and then I added a bunch of things that would derail you. So, looking forward to seeing you for the next episode, which will run about 5 hours.
Okay.
Presumably.
Works for me.
Yeah, thank you for supporting us. Thank you for subscribing to the Patreon. Do you have anything else we want to plug?
Do you mind skipping to the very end so I can plug my
Yes,
thing?
yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
hold
Just
on, let
throw
me
out
see
the
if I
last
can do
slide.
that.
We'll plug it in both.
Oh, I didn't know you could press it and you could just go there. Damn.
Yeah.
Okay,
Wow.
so
I learned a new feature of PowerPoint today.
Well done.
we're at the end of the slideshow. I run a nonprofit. The nonprofit that I run was intended to be like a community development for trans women in the sciences and academia, because this is my side of things. The whole industry of rockets and space was founded on the backs of Nazis. So like we have always been historically underrepresented, and it's pretty hostile in the work environment. As society has shifted into using trans people as a wedge issue, and certain states have gotten very dangerous to live in as a trans person, my nonprofit has started pivoting a little bit. We still do community events, but I use my house and the spare cupboard that has a mattress in it and my guest room that I would ordinarily be renting out to a student to support trans women who would be otherwise unhoused. My nonprofit, I provide a stipend, I provide assistance with connecting with state resources, and I provide assistance with identity document alignment, where we take someone in who just has to get the heck out of Dodge. They come to my house, they have all of the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy, right? They can build a life they have housing, they have food, they have meds, they have their identity documents. That's my goal within 90 days. People don't usually have to stay the full 90 days to be back on their feet. We're all pretty resilient. We made it this far at least. And I'm supporting this with my day job. I work for a national laboratory doing spacecraft flight control. It's pretty good pay. The cost of living here is pretty ridiculous. I can support 2 people, but I don't have any margin left over. If something goes wrong with my car, I start riding my bike. If something goes wrong with my bike, I better be able to fix it myself. If I have a medical emergency or one of my guests has a medical emergency, things get really dicey really fast. If you wanted, dear viewer, to support this effort of helping people out, I currently have 2 guests right now in my rescue program. Both of my beds are full. One of them is leaving this week, so I'm wishing her the best. We will greatly appreciate any support you can offer. There's a lot of strain on our community right now in terms of just raw resources. Anything you can provide, I promise will be used. It is a registered nonprofit. It is on my taxes. It will not be misspent. I do have to track receipts. The sculptor.co is the address. You can type it into any search bar and it should bring up the site. And then there are links to either join if you are in the greater Denver Boulder area, you can just join the community and come to my movie nights and hang out with the group. We're all good people. We're all autistic. We're all trans. It's a good time. If not, if you just want to support us, my Patreon is the best way to support because that's reliable income that I can kind of count on a little bit more than one-time donations. One-time donations are great. Don't let that stop you. But the Patreon really does help me plan the budget for what I can provide to my rescue guests. That's all I have to say.
Okay.
If you want to help, please do.
Absolutely go and do that now.
All right. Yes.
It's
Otherwise,
far more
I'll be
expensive
very,
than a Well There's
very
Your
annoyed
Problem
with you.
bonus episode subscription. So, and you don't get what you pay for. Someone else gets what you pay for, which is the whole point of a
It's the idea
charity.
of charity. Yeah.
Yes.
All right,
Thank you
perfect.
so much.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
All right, and we will see you again in part 2. Bye, everyone.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.